Good morning.
Good morning. We have a few people coming in, attendees. Hello.
I hope you got your coffee.
I need my coffee, actually. Sunday morning for you guys, where most of you are possibly chilling out. Maybe it's the evening in other places. I am actually in work. In an office. It's quite hot outside, though, to be fair, so I can't moan too much.
How hot is it, Natasha? Tell us about Qatar.
We are in, hang on, I'll see it on my phone, on my watch. I'm not outside, see, because I'm stuck indoors. 30-something degrees.
Oh, for goodness sake.
I know, it's so good. I'm not going to lie. No, it is so nice. And obviously on the weekends, at least we get a chance to relax and chill, etc., etc. Unlike you and your hat. I'm loving your merch, though, by the way, Liz.
Oh, yeah, you can't see the full effect. I've got to be careful because I had to come up to the eaves because my Wi-Fi is rubbish. Look, there you go. Look, I'm proper merched out. But I need it in Switzerland. It's cold. The winter has landed. We have snow on the mountains. I was just seeing if I could quickly. Oh yeah, if I turn this around, you might see Austria. So I'm in Switzerland. Those that don't know, I don't know if you can see anything. Can you see any snow on the mountains? Maybe at the top.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's here. Oh, these my children have come to say
Hi.
hello. That's Freya and Austin. Hi guys.
Oh, they're so cute. What are they asking for? Breakfast? Lunch?
They want to go downstairs to play with the dog. Yes, go.
Excellent.
Anyway, hello everybody.
Hello everybody. So it is our last session for this Unconference. So we've got lots of people, exciting people lined up to deliver the last few sessions for us. We also have our gender cheese right at the end, which we're looking forward to. Obviously, you have me, Natasha, in Qatar, and then you obviously have Liz in Switzerland, who's also just introduced herself. We are trying to obviously present and do the tech, so it might mess up sometimes. We will hopefully not, and we will try our best. But opening up today's session, obviously based on the last 2 days, it feels like 3 days, 2 days, 2 days of amazing speakers, we are opening up with the question, what if we broke the table? So Liz, go on. What if we broke the table? What are the kinds of things that you've been looking at over the weekend, and kind of what you've got feedback from, and from any of the sessions, to be fair?
Well, it's really consistent for me. I think it comes back to Ginsberg, and Vivian mentioned this when we opened. I was on a train in Geneva when we opened, and what she said, going back to Ginsberg, is that women need to be wherever decisions are being made that ultimately affect them. They need to be there, whether that's the table, the room, whatever that might be. And we've got a long way to go. And I find increasingly, because I'm a CEO and director myself, is I'm seeing even now. We mentioned the Mail article last week in the UK, where they said a diet for CEOs, and on the picture was this man. I'm going to get it in a minute. I'm just going to wave it in front of everybody. If you haven't, please do find it. It's on my Twitter, but I'll share it in a second. And it's extraordinary that even now we have made progress. Yes, we have, but there's a long way to go, and we can talk a little bit more about. I'm obviously in the international sector like you, Natasha, so I've been around the world like you, and in the time that I've been, I first went international as a head in 2006, so quite a long time ago now. You can see the wrinkles, you see the kind of, it's happening. But one of the things that I've noticed is I recently advertised for a head of primary and head of senior schools. So we've put in some new leadership tiers in the school to build capacity. And I did some analysis for TES just over the weekend on the distribution of those applications. I had around 65 applications, 65% of applications were women. And yet when I looked at, that's for the primary school, for the senior school role, there was 45% of the applications for women. And when we look at the global data, we're still sitting around that kind of figure, and yet we represent around 75% of the global education population. So we've still got a long way to go. And we need to look at many aspects of this. We're talking about our campaigns, Natasha. One of the campaigns is that we want more women leaders. I don't want to walk into any more rooms like I did a few weeks ago. Well, I explained this on the first session. There are about 50, 60 people at this event. I walk in, the woman who was administering the event, so she's in the admin role, walked up to me with my sticker badge and gave it to me. And I thought it was because I was like super cool and everyone knew who I was. And then I realized, no, I'm not that cool. I'm the only woman in the room. It was interesting. They took some press photographs of that event and they went up on things like LinkedIn, and they were like, well, it's all men. Where are the women? Well, there was a woman there and it was me, but I was the only one. And we've got to do so much better in this field. And then, of course, it comes onto the gender pay gap in the international sector. As you know, Natasha, women get paid for CEO, principal, headship roles just under 20% less than their male colleagues. If you happen to be a non-white woman, well, then you're looking around a 33% pay gap, which is absolutely disgraceful. And that's one of our other campaigns as well. But there we are. I've mentioned 2. I think that gives me bonus points with Vivian. Do you reckon? We get these lists just so everybody knows.
I'm going to
we
wait
get
and
the
go
Vivian
now.
list.
Like, did you hear that? We were just speaking to some of the speakers earlier on, everyone online, and we've got our little notes and we've written things down to make sure that we say everything we need to say and do everything we need to do. But actually, in all fairness, even when me and Liz are just having these conversations, and we were just having a conversation prior to coming on live and just saying, it comes naturally because it's actually lived experience. I think I suppose for me and Liz, though, we are in a situation now where we are in these positions, though, and we need to start supporting and opening the doors and making sure that we put places in the table for anybody else that that is there and is around. And I think that it's really important that we make sure that we're doing that. We've been given the privilege of being in this position, so let's start getting the right people in the right seats and making sure that we're opening up those doors as well. And it's funny actually, Liz, because last year we had some headship position for secondary come up, and the same thing, at the end of those the applications, when you're looking at them and you're reviewing them, obviously you've got the data that comes up at the bottom of that test. And I looked and I used it for a webinar I was doing, actually, because I was just shocked at the few women that were applying for the role. But then it was like, okay, but what are we doing in order to make sure that we're opening it up so that women feel welcomed into applying for these positions? And there's like so much work around it, but we need to start thinking about how we are making sure that we are opening up for women, people of color, etc., and making sure, because when I looked at the stats, it was inevitable. It was generally going to end up being a white Christian male. When I looked at the data, it ended up being a white Christian female, and my colleague Rebecca, and she's absolutely amazing, and she was the best person out of everybody that had applied and stuff. But it was, it was a lot of hard work to sift through everyone, and actually there was just loads and loads of male applicants versus everybody else. So so it was an interesting one, but we need to make sure that we're not not just breaking those tables, but making sure that people are actually wanting to come to the table. What have we got on offer for people as well, and making sure it's fair, because the pay gap is an absolute joke, to be honest.
Yeah, and I talk about it everywhere I go now. When I'm looking at early career leaders as well, it's really starting to encourage our not necessarily younger, but our earlier in career, perhaps, teachers to really know how to have those conversations, to know their own value and not see it. I mean, I talk about a lot. When in my early career, I used to just feel grateful that somebody offered me a job. I was like, I'm really good at what I do. But somehow I always felt that it would be rude, this kind of not wanting to talk about money, not wanting to talk about packages. And little did I know that other people were doing that. And the cumulative effect of that over a lifetime career is significant. So now I know better. And that's one of the things that we have a duty of care to instill in others, is to open up these conversations and make it normal to talk about packages, particularly in our kind of sector, the international education sector, where it's not just about the money, it's about the school fees for your kids, making sure that they get properly funded. It's about repatriation, it's about CPD. So it's not always about the money, it's about the experience and the way that you work, which I think is really important for women. I'm aware of time, Natasha. We're going to get into trouble. It's 11:10.
We are perfectly on time, actually. Perfectly on time to introduce our first session. So we've got WomenEd Tech on the line.
Woo!
And we have Claire and Bucky. You are there as well.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Hi.
Morning.
Hi,
Good morning, ladies.
Morning.
So are we okay to hand over to you?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Morning,
I'm going
Bucky.
silent. Go for it.
Thank you. Fantastic. So first of all, thank you for allowing myself and Claire to be here on behalf of Women Ed Tech. And we're going to be looking at a very interesting question regarding the role of women in tech. But before we go into this, let me introduce myself. My name is Buki Yusuf. For those of you that don't know, I am I'm a network leader for Women Ed London, but I love all things to do with ed tech. And let me leave it there because I could spend about 5 minutes talking about the different things I'm involved with. But I'll hand over to Claire before we actually look at the theme that we're going to be talking about in today's session.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Claire Roberts, actually, but I treat as Sierra Erasmus Teach. And I've been involved for the last 8 years in EdTech subjects as a teacher, as a middle leader, and pretty much just fumbling my way through it, but having an absolute ball and loving all the stuff I'm learning and just wondering why I'm not any further now down the line in my career than I should be. Lots of questions and getting rather agitated about it. So let's chat about it, Bucky.
All right, thank you so much. So the theme of today's discussion is more women around the EdTech table, possible or not. And there have been a number of things recently in the news where the idea has been discussed about why aren't there more women in terms of not just along the pipeline, but also leading within EdTech at various levels. And more importantly, what we can actually do to change this. So I am going to pose the first question to you, Claire. So the idea is that we need to have more young ladies, more women studying STEM subjects, including computing studies. So my question to you, Claire, if you'd like to kick off, is this: computing enough? So the idea is the fact we should have more young women, shall we say, involved in coding and things like that, taking computer studies. Is that enough?
You know, Bucky, I think just therein lies the problem. You've only named one tech subject, which is computer science and coding. And I think we need to get away from this idea that tech is coding. No, actually being involved in tech, you can come from many, many different angles. The way I came into tech, I came in through the film industry. So I was actually working actively in the film industry, fascinated by the world of, 16 mil, 35 mil. Then we went over to digital, really interesting. And I actually found this a really interesting world, the way that the digital revolution was affecting the entertainment and arts industry. And so I found my way into teaching with the tech subjects. And I think that's the problem, is coding itself is quite, and I'm going to use the words carefully, it feels quite masculine the way it's marketed. Mm-hmm. The subject itself, we know it's a STEM subject. It doesn't necessarily always lend itself to some of our girls being curious, inquisitive, just want to try it out. So let's stop saying, okay, we've got to get girls into coding, and let's just say, let's get our girls into the tech subjects. So I teach media, I teach ICT, I line manage computer science. So let's get the girls into these subjects, just using tech, playing with tech, using tech to their strengths, and hook and engage them. And then once we've done that, watch them fly. But we are struggling to sort of get them into those subjects. They tend to be quite male dominated. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, we need our female role models, teaching the tech subjects. And I think it's the way we market it as well. So instead of just saying, look, if you want to get into the tech industry, you need to take computer science. No, actually the tech industry is now touching every subject. Actually, it's the tech is just an enabler. It's what you do with the tech. It's what you do with the tech that's exciting. So that's my answer there. I think we need to sort of broaden the catchment almost of getting young girls into our tech subjects overall.
Thank you so much for kicking us off, Claire, with that. And it's interesting, I wanted to add to that. When I did some research for this, and I think it was to do with, say, statistics in America, 40% of women who had STEM careers, obviously including tech, 40% of women who studied a qualification in STEM including technology, did not actually go into careers related to STEM or technology as well. So I think there's a bit of a fallacy thinking that just because you do the qualification, it automatically leads into the career in tech. And if I give myself an example, I think, you know, if I show my age, did computer studies, hated it because I thought it was going to be gaming in a way, and dropped it. But that did not, so I did not have a formal qualification in it, but what I did have was curiosity. And I think that one of the things that's actually missing is the fact that we live in a digital era and we're using tech in a variety of different ways. The key thing, are we valuing the different skills, experiences that we bring into technology, or is there, I suppose, a typical view of what technology means, who should be involved in that, and the value of the skills that are actually linked to that?
And Bucky, I just want to add to this because it's something that kind of hit me in the face in my mature years, you know, is that it's actually everybody at some point in this lovely world of tech will be extremely vulnerable and not know what they're doing because it's just a default. But somehow I think a lot of girls feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand how to use this tech. Therefore, I'm useless. And we just put up this wall going, I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it. But actually, what I've learned is just be curious, Claire. Sit down with it, play with it, explore it, ask questions, be vulnerable and say to the person next to you or in your community, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing here. Can you help? And then as soon as you get that out the way, that imposter syndrome, I don't belong here, and you're vulnerable, you know, quick as lightning, you'll have wonderful people coming forward going, let me show you. And then once you know, then again, I go back to the tech is just an enabler of where you want to go with your vision. Yes. And this is what's so exciting about the digital revolution is just the visions that are coming out and what we're making the tech do. And actually, this is where women are really important because it's about working with a community. You need much more than just tech skills. You need the skills which us women, you know, have, you know, which is great communication skills, empathy, you know, inquiry, etc., etc.
Yes, thank you. And yes, and you're looking at entrepreneurial skills, which, you know, is being touted as being very important now. But again, I think I go back to the point about the value that's actually placed in that. So let me pose the next question then in that case to you, Claire. How would you say we can actually get more women involved within the ed tech conversation? Now, you did say about the fact that there are lots of different ways we can actually get involved with it, and there are lots of different things that women are already doing, which may not be part of the table. So how could we bring them to the table to get involved in the discussion in the first place?
Oh, Bucky, well, you and I know we've talked a lot about this, haven't you? I mean, I think we spent a good hour and a half chatting about this one again and again and again. Okay, so I'm just going to echo what I said yesterday. Let's scrap the table. Okay, the table isn't working. The table's been around since the year dot, and look where it's got us. Okay. So what I do is stuff when it's not working and I've tried to make it work and tried to make it work. I just say, right, let's think out the box. It's coming from a different angle. And you know what is working? WomenEd is working. Lots of other fantastic communities that I've seen happening. You know, Diverse Ed, you know, lots of great communities. The communities are happening. So how do we get more women around? Let's say, how can we hear more women's voices? How can we see more women leading? I think communities are the way to go. I said this yesterday, tables are finite, communities are infinite. Tables suggest somebody's got to be invited. Communities are open, they've got scalability, you know, you join. Tables can be quite competitive. And also quite threatening, you know, whereas communities, it's just about getting involved in the chat and conversation. So how do we get more women involved? We need communities like WomenEd Tech needs to be maybe on mighty networks. We need to have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 women just joining it, and then take away the pressure, take away the threat of getting it wrong, not knowing what they talk about, and start this conversation. And what we see in communities like WomenEd is the confidence is built. People start to realize, actually, I do make sense. I do know what I'm doing. Actually, why am I not putting myself forward? And it's about holding that space and amplifying each other's voices. You know, I was involved in a project that won the BET Award in 2019, you know, Bucky, and I would never have built that up with my students if I hadn't been supported by a group like WomenEd saying, Claire, it's amazing what you're doing, keep doing it. You know, I didn't know what I was doing half the time. I was just being curious and engaging my students and building an app. But I needed the community behind me saying, you know, you're on a good wicket, keep going, keep going. And so back to the thing, how do we get more women involved? Let's build these communities that are fluid, that are that have got these supportive structures. Let's amplify those voices. Let's lean in. You know, you've got some amazing skills, Bucky, and I've just seen you lean in and just lend those skills to other women. You know, empowering them to come up, you know, and join you. And so that's my answer. What would you say to it, Bucky?
Thank you. Well, thank you for the shout out as well in that regard, Claire. I would say that I'm involved, I work with a number of individuals, organizations, companies that actually recognize the skills that I bring with regards to tech. Now, as I said, I dabbled with it as a kid, you know, like gaming and things like that. And the curiosity led me to think about what else can we do with technology? And I always have that curious focus. How can this tech, whatever that tech is, make a difference to what we're trying to do? Now, obviously, with the teaching and learning aspect, it's how can it enhance teaching and learning? That's a question at my mind. And because of that sense of curiosity, I look at things from a different perspective. And I feel very fortunate and blessed to be working with a number of different organizations who are through, you know, like engaging and allowing people like myself to be part of the discussions, are trying to bring about some change so that there is more diversity, more equality, and more representation. However, I think that there needs to be more than that. So Marie Hicks, in her book, her fantastic book, Program Inequality, highlights about the fact that she highlights a number of different things. When you look back to the origin of tech within the UK, in Britain, in the 40s, it was women who were leading the front. But the issue was the fact that the skills they were bringing, you know, utilizing programming, debugging, all these particular things that we recognize now, they were not valued as skills then.
Interesting.
It was really interesting. And
Sure.
they were also involved in electronics. And this is part of the reason why Dave Stevie Shirley, she recognized this and was seeing about the fact that once it was recognized about the role and the importance of technology in the 60s and 70s, the switch happened. The women were no longer valued. They weren't really valued anyway, but they were no longer employed to lead in the managerial roles. They were actually, the ironic thing was the fact that they were required to train the men who were going to be leading, who then supervised the women that trained them. Crazy. So the reason I mentioned about Dame Steve.
So Bucky, what year? What was that? The 50s you're talking about, or the
60s? Yes, 60s.
About the 60s now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you just look at the patriarchal society. You just have to look at the world of media that was happening then, the way women were portrayed. I mean, it's diabolical. The representation of women, yeah.
It is, but it's linked to a number of different things. So part of, and this is the reason I'm saying it's about a bigger structural change. It's a systemic change we're actually looking at. Because as, you know, if you read the book by Marie Hicks, Program Inequality, the decisions, you know, to make the change were not deliberate. I mean, were not accidental. And it didn't happen overnight. So it's reverse engineering that so that we can actually value women. And again, it's about, you know, now post-pandemic, flexible working is a thing. Part-time working is a thing. Working remotely is a thing. We can engage and work in different ways. And I think it's actually trying to remove some of the biases about the fact that, oh, you know, well, what happens if a woman goes on maternity? What happens if a woman's going through menopause? Is she still able to contribute? All of these things, we need to be open about it and recognize, okay, these will be considerations that may make people nervous about employing women, particularly in leading things, but how can we actually bring about a change? So I actually wanted to mention that. I also want to mention now a book Dr. Anna Marie Imafadden, she recently produced a book called She's in Control. And again, it goes into the idea about what women bring to the role and with regards to technology in its broadest sense. And it's about, for example, rather than looking as tech as a separate entity, we live in a technological, this is the digital age. It's thinking about, what are you passionate about? What are you keen about? Where are you really interested? Okay, how could tech come into that? I mentioned that because, for example, you have the CEO of Snag, Bree Reed, who, even though she produced Snag tights for women of various shapes and things like that, because of the limitations of what's already there, interestingly, she says that she has a tech company. She is the CEO of a tech company because they operated remotely. She said that a lot of the people within her organization are introverts. So working remotely, sharing messages on WhatsApp or emails or what have you was natural then before the pandemic. But what was really interesting was I was struck because if you'd asked me what was she as CEO, I would have said a clothes company or a tights hosiery. So I think, again, it's about redefining what technology is in its broadest sense, here and now, adding value, valuing, I've said that deliberately 3 times, valuing the skills that are actually brought in there and actually thinking about management in different ways, leadership and management in different ways, and how all of the skills that we take for granted, that we're trying to utilize, entrepreneurial skills, creativity skills, communication skills, these can be utilized in various ways by various people if we actually provide the opportunity for it. So I'm noticing the time.
Oh, but Bucky, it's fantastic what you said about those books. My reading list is just tripled. That's fantastic. I'll please put them on Twitter afterwards so that I can get those books on Amazon. But Bucky, there's another thing about why can't we get more women involved in EdTech leadership? I think I'm not seeing the roles advertised. I mean, I'm stunned that every school does not have an EdTech strategic lead, especially after COVID. I'm stunned. We've got a network manager and we've got tech support. Okay, which we know is a very different kind of role in our schools. But where are our tech strategic leads? And these roles, first of all, need to be created. And secondly, the default should not be that, the network manager is going to be the EdTech strategic lead because they understand computers, because often that is a man. I think we need to look at what is EdTech leadership. It's not about being a techie. It is about being able to lead a community, understanding your stakeholders, understanding what the end purpose is, and actually, showing all those true leadership skills of seeing a project through, that is fluidly delivered and everybody feels like, they're represented.
But that links again to an understanding about when you mentioned, okay, what's curious post-pandemic is we almost seem to be going backwards in time. We've done the technology, we've had the Zoom and the remote experience, and I understand about the limitations of that. I'm not saying that tech is a be-all and end-all. I do get that. But what is interesting is the fact that schools, you can see, like schools who are moving away from that particular aspect and saying we've been there and done that without them realizing that there is still a place for technology, particularly for the young people who will not, who can't come on site to actually learn, and also because it's a way of keeping staff who work flexibly, who work remotely, in touch. You can still maintain that connection and that feeling of part of community through the tech. But I put that to one side. It links back, Claire, to what you say about the importance and the value that we place with regard to that, even though you've got these other measures that will seem more pressing. So it's also recognizing, as you said earlier, about the fact that it's not the tech per se, the tech facilitates whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Tech provides possibilities. The tech can be a lever, it can provide solutions, but we need to think more creatively. And I get, I'm a school leader, sometimes you can't even go to the bathroom, much less have the time to sit and think. But I think unless we actually step back to actually look at the bigger picture and think, in what way can technology facilitate or bring about the changes we're actually looking for, one, and then secondly, who is the best person or best people to do that. And it's actually casting a wider net to looking at the staff and the skills they bring. We will be maintaining the status quo and not really moving forward in ways we possibly can. So Claire, I am keeping an eye on the time. We have got 10 minutes. No, that's okay. I want to make sure that we cover as much as we possibly can. Are there any other ways that we can increase representation? Now, you mentioned a really interesting point about the fact that more often than not, when there are roles linked to tech that that exist, they are not being advertised. So this again links to the idea of network. We need to really be part of a network so that we're kept in the know, we're kept up to date. People recognize and understand what it is we bring to the table, so to speak, and what we stand for. But it also provides opportunities for us to be informed of opportunities as and when they arise. Are there any other ways in which we could actually increase diverse representation or allow more women to be part of this?
Well, I mean, look, the roles aren't being advertised. So, part of me just thinks, okay, we're going to go onto Mighty Networks after this, and we're just going to form a Mighty Networks group called the Future EdTech Strategic Leaders. Boom. We will say, we are here. All you have to do is advertise a job. We are ready to take it, and just get women from all communities, to join, and let's just start having the conversation. Why do we need strategic leads? It takes strategic leads in schools. What do schools need to be moving forward? Let's start having that conversation, because we know that our schools are limited. We know that funding is limited. We know that skills are limited. We know that infrastructure is limited. We know there's lots and lots of problems. But we do know that ed tech is a great way of closing the gap. It's a great way of enabling equality. We know what tech can do. We need to start having that conversation so that we can start bringing our schools up to speed, up to spec, because let's be honest, some of our UK schools are still stuck in the Victorian era, and even after COVID, it seems like people have gone back. I mean, it was interesting because after during COVID, we were still doing quite a hybrid learning, sort of textbooks and online. And after COVID, I said, the 5 subjects I was line managing, I said, we're not going backwards. It's going to be completely online now. All our delivery, our marking, our feedback, everything is going to be online, and I'm happy to say my photocopying budget is very, very small now.
Exactly. So it's highlighting the benefits of doing that. And I think it's not, I think people forget quite easily. And again, under pressure, we revert back to our default behaviors. But I think it's a reinforcement about the benefits where they exist about tech, particularly with a school environment. So Claire, I'm going to change tack because I'd like to share some of the comments. So for everyone that's actually joining us, thank you so much for joining myself and Claire in our discussion regarding this. So Purvi Gandhi, forgive me Purvi if I've mispronounced your first name, she said that when her daughter was struggling with a task in her computer science lesson, her teacher told her that she should not get so emotional. I wonder how girls in these male-dominated fields are being supported. And she poses a question, maybe teacher training. What do you think? How could young women be supported in such male-dominated fields?
Well, I think what Pippi's just picked up there is the language you use, and there's been lots of conversations about this in conference. It's just that is just the wrong language to use because it's. I mean, where do you go from there? That's just a block. I can't be me.
Exactly. And what is wrong with being emotional? And this is the thing. Computing isn't just a devoid of emotion. People make the tech work. So but I think what it does in a way, it highlights again some of the internal biases that we link to this, and the fact that you need to be rational, you need to be logical, clinical thinking. It doesn't mean to say that emotions cannot go into that, but more seriously, I wonder what Purvi's daughter has taken as a result of that, and whether she then is making decisions internally about whether or not computer science is for her or not, based on that particular comment.
So my suggestion, I mean, I had the privilege of working with a fantastic female computer science teacher in my previous school, absolute amazing role model, and hopefully would inspire lots of young girls coming through. So I think that's the first thing. We need to get, you know, women delivering the EdTech subjects, you know, as role models. But also, I feel like coding again is quite a formal subject, and it's like learning to play a piano or learning to play an instrument. It's jolly hard. You know, you don't get to play a piano or guitar really well in the first 3 or 4 years. You know, it's a few little strums or a few little keys, and that's all. And you think, I'm not getting anywhere. Just like that with coding, it is a language. You know, so my answer to that is, you know, this is where we should be having coding clubs, and we should be playing around with our tech, and almost having fun with it, you know, because that's and actually, you know, maybe coding is not the way for all young girls to come in first, you know. So maybe just working creatively, like with media, you know. So I work a lot with film and editing equipment, and you know, and vlogs, and that kind of hook the girls in, because we have to play around a lot with tech, multiple platforms to create our products. We shoot on our phone, and you know, and we share, and we edit, and we come out on various other platforms, and just hook them in like that. You know, so that's my answer to that one. Yes, train our teachers, be aware of our gender biased language that we use. Let's enable our young people to come in from whichever angle they are interested in, and let's just play with the tech.
Absolutely, and thank you for because that segues to something I'm going to say. It does get my goat a little bit when I mentioned about coding. Not to say that coding is not important, but there are other aspects in which tech is involved. For example, emerging cybersecurity, data analysis and data sciences, AI and machine learning. So there are lots of different things beyond you know, just coding. I think that's a little bit short-sighted. You know, here and now, that's a particular skill. What about looking ahead to the future? But anyway, and
those units are all part of the IT curriculum, you know, because I'm teaching IT, and those are all part of what we call, you know, digital technology, you know, information systems, etc. You know, they're part of the IT curriculum.
Right. Well, Purvi says that her daughter is the only usually the only girl in a lot of these classes and clubs, and she believes that she just needs to just power through in order to make a bigger difference in the future. So, you know, all the very best to your daughter, Purvi. Jess also shared some questions, posed points, you know, about the fact that would a teacher have said such a thing to a boy? Would that particular comment be made to a boy? And Jess also says that, interestingly, in early years, tech is absolutely chosen and enjoyed by both sexes. Children choose it equally. Why should this change? And why indeed? And there may be wider societal messages that make it seem, you know, like this is what boys should be doing. This is what girls should be doing, perhaps. Hi, Liz. Hi, Liz and Natasha. Okay, I'm just trying to see if there are any more points we can say. Yeah, we've got 2 minutes, and we went through about a couple of questions, 2 or 3 questions. I think we need an hour. Next time we need an hour.
We did.
But we touched upon, I think we touched upon some of the key points, and obviously it is a longer and deeper discussion, but I think systemic changes are required. Otherwise, what you'll have are short-term changes that may seem, you know, like, for example, we may have more women, you know, more diverse women coming through, as though that is the end goal, whereas actually, no, we need to have greater and wider and more sustainable changes. So anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Claire, thank you so much for sharing your insights as well.
Thank you,
Liz, thank you. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Late. Honestly, like that was so in-depth, gave us lots and lots of thirst for thought. Is that the right saying?
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
6 minutes is fine.
Yeah, no, honestly, no, really, really good, really in depth. And there were a couple of things you said. What did I get really angry about? That emotional thing. Like, honestly, but I'm not gonna get started.
Yeah, let's not.
I'm gonna rein it in before I kick off.
Yeah.
But it's that type of language that we hear all the time. And actually, where you're saying that we need to make sustained change, it's also changes in things like our language. And you know, literally, when we had one of our sessions yesterday, and oh, who was it? It wasn't Flo. I can't remember actually. Somebody said, you know, let's stop using the word guys. And literally I ended the session by saying, bye guys. And I'm like, Natasha, you're doing it. Like, stop.
It
So
is.
all of this is, but it's continued. And you know what? We need to call each other out when we're doing it ourselves as well. Someone needs to call me out.
Yeah, true. In a supportive way, call each other out. Because change does take time, even within ourselves. It does take time, but it's recognizing the need, it's recognizing that, and also recognizing the sustained need to continue with that change.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Agreed.
So thank you both. Absolutely amazing. And
Thank you
long-time
so
supporters of WomenEd, of course. It's lovely to see you both and to kind of set us off on a Sunday morning. It was awesome.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
And next, Natasha.
We have Bianca.
Come on, Bianca. You've been ready to go.
Hello.
Purple lights behind her and everything, all for the moment.
I've got purple lights. Obviously, there are other hotels, so I'm not going to name it. I'm just going to put my presentation on. Thank you to Bucky and Claire for a brilliant start to the day. Yeah, slideshow. Can you just say that it is working?
It's working.
Fabulous. Right, good. Do you know, I was going to start off with the good morning, but it isn't everywhere, is it? So hello. My name is Bianca Greenhalgh. I am currently head of school, but I have got more to share about my journey. And I think Becky was right. Change does, I've had to make sure I catch it, but change does take time, and it's about sustained change. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is my journey, my part of my narrative. And there are lots of sort of common themes sort of running through my journey and the story I'm going to tell you today, in the hope that I create a space where we can talk more about some of our experiences. So I am a Southeast and Eastern regional lead. Southeast and Eastern are very much a joined group. I lived in the Southeast Sussex area. I now live in Suffolk, so I've been able to stay in that group, which is very exciting for me. I'm going to start off with this, my journey, my narrative that I'm going to share with you today. I've been thinking about the title of this presentation for a while, and I haven't quite got there yet, because it is very much the beginning of me shaping this. I started off at Pedigree sharing some of this story, and I can see a couple of people in the room that will have heard some of it. But as Becky said, it takes time to change, and it is evolving as I move forward. Now, I thought about that sort of idea of failing forward. John Maxwell's quotation, to purposely and deliberately use failure to find success, and the idea that it's a conscious process that first requires us to give up the obsessive need to be perfect. And we talk a lot in WomenEd about the perfection and the fact that women often try and find that perfection. I've always had this saying, this expression, you know, in the pursuit of perfection, we shall achieve excellence. But sometimes we have to be okay with good is good enough sometimes. I know Melissa and Jacinta in Being 10% Braver, one of the WomenEd books, did a chapter on moving mindsets and failing forward. And I do really think it is a change of mindset. The word fail, it feels quite a dirty word, doesn't it? And I think that's where we sit with it sometimes. And it can feel quite uncomfortable, because, you know, if we're failing, then that's quite personal. And that fear of failure, there's plenty of research out there that suggests that that is what holds women back in positions of leadership. Now, when I shared some of this with my son, I even considered, I was trying to play with the title, and I thought about tripping towards failing, you know, your sort of new successes. And then you look at sort of what tripping actually means, that idea of making a mistake, tripping up. And you know what, we do make mistakes. When failure happens, it's felt really deeply, and there's a lot of internalizing and sort of blaming oneself with that, and it's not always your mistake. You know, there are contributing factors to that. So I've settled on this quotation for now, and because I like this idea of failing forward towards your success, sort of that's where I am with it at the moment. Now I'm going to start with yes, that is me, with a bit of my story, really, from the beginning. Now, please, you know, please remember that when I share this, this was in the 70s, and we weren't as consciously aware and talking about cultural appropriation And so when I share some of the language, it's very much my where I was then, to be able to help me to share this story. But this is me, and I'm always happy to be centre stage. Give me a I'm there, something to do with my background in my degree. And, you know, I've always been quite certain of myself. You know, we all have that gremlin that I'll talk about a bit later, that imposter. But I have always been quite sure of myself. And this was a holiday that my parents had taken me on. And in fact, my mum made me this outfit. And when she first gave it to me, I wouldn't wear it. And then I would. And I wouldn't take it off, in fact, on this particular holiday. And there was a fancy dress competition, and I stood on the stage with the hands down by my side, and the man on the stage asked me what my name was, and I boldly said, I'm an Indian. And that's sort of being able to stand up and be confident about that role, I think, that I'm talking about, that role, that assuming a role, was something that has always been quite strong in my personality. Now, fast forward a little bit, and I'm on another holiday, and we arrived, and my parents left me in a safe space because we had family there, and it was an entertainment area, and they went to take their bags to the room. And when they came back, there I had lined up all of the other children, and I was teaching them a dance routine. Now, they say I've always been quite bossy. I say I've always been a leader. They might even have said fussy. I say my own mind, you get the gist. So, so that's sort of very early stages of my life that I'm sharing. Now, I don't know if anyone remembers this or if you've seen the clip. It's a French and Saunders interpretive dance clip. This is one of the themes that's going to come through. I absolutely love it. My cousin sends it to me, the clip, every so often because he thinks it's hilarious. This would have been me at university. So I suppose bringing a chair to a space has always been part of my makeup in the various steps of my journey. I also did a bit of tree hugging, which is one of those other common themes that will be running through this. And this is me at the end of my university journey. And there I am again, hands down by my side, standing tall. And this was me getting my degree. I was really privileged. I had parents that supported me to go to university to do what I loved. So another common theme, dance and performing arts it was. And throughout my career, I have felt very lucky. I've had many opportunities and I've grasped them. I've had great mentors and coaches on my journey, on my career journey. And I came into teaching to become a head because I wanted to have that wider scope of influence and be able to make the big decisions that create opportunities for young people. Now, there were times where I questioned whether I still wanted it, and that's also part of my story, but I said I would be a head by 45. Now, throughout my career, I was told I was the real deal. I would definitely be ahead. I worked really hard to hone my skills in my teaching in the classroom initially, and then in my leadership along the way. And I became ahead on the 1st of September, and I turned 46 on the 13th of September. So I'm very proud of that part of my journey. And I had a great start to headship. Now, it was one of the most challenging times to start my headship. It was during COVID times. And I was ahead. I was where I wanted to be, and then I wasn't. And it was devastating. I questioned whether I wanted to be in education at all. You know, I made mistakes. We all make mistakes along the way, and lots of things that I learned from. And I just had that moment of thinking, well, how can I and all of these people be wrong? What's next? And we've all had moments of adversity in our personal and professional lives, and how do we deal with them so that we don't just hide under a quilt, and so that we actually fail in moving forward towards our successes. So moving on, I had to really do some hard thinking about what I wanted to do next. And you know, I'm still in my story. So what I'd like you to do, because it's really important that we have a think about how our own journeys and create those spaces where we can share. So think about your story. Think about those moments that perhaps things didn't go according to plan. I think we all have them. I have moments from, gosh, 10, 15 years ago in my leadership story where I was still, you know, in the witching hour in the middle of the night, you know, the 2 till 5 time where you're awake and replaying some of those conversations that still make you cringe. I want to ask you, what did you learn from your experience? What did you take forward towards your own success? What would you say to someone else who has had a similar experience? So I'm just going to pause there for a moment, because what I'm hoping is that we can in some comments in the chat. Liz, because my presentation's up, Liz and Natasha, would you mind having a look to see if there is anything in the chat to share whilst I move forward a little bit? Sorry, I'm just presentations. Is that all right? Just keep an eye on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, ladies, gentlemen, anyone that's in the room, I keep saying guys, can you please go into the chats then, making sure that we are thinking then about Bianca.
Thanks. Think about your own stories and just those moments. It's a really good space here to think about those successes. What have we learned from them, and what would you say to someone who's had a similar experience? And just keep an eye on that chat, because I'll carry on with my story moving forward with my presentation, if that's okay.
Fantastic. And I will get us kick-started, and I will put my first thing in there in terms of
thank you very much. So
Thank
I'm just going, you're right there. So I'm just going to move on because, you know, we always talk about this sort of fight, flight or freeze. I've never experienced before, not really, not in this way. And you know, that sort of, you know, I'm not a fighter really. That's not, you know, and pushing back particularly. So I probably sat in, and I found this when I was sort of looking at it and reflecting on where I was. And this idea of flop, you know, it's all my fault, it's not worth it, that feeling, that apathetic feeling, that freeze, that panic, the wanting to get out of somewhere because of the overwhelm and that flight. But I also, when I saw this idea of friend, that rang true as well, really, with my experience, because it wasn't so much about not taking responsibility for myself and some of the decisions I made, but it was that sort of leaning on my colleagues in a way that was perhaps not helpful, and because of that freeze moment, that was where I was. And but since I've been thinking about it, I want to add another one. There's this idea, you know, we talk about failing forwards, but you know, for a moment, falling backwards and backtracking. Well, I know what I said that I delivered on, you know, in terms of my previous history and my experiences, but really I did have a team that were brilliant and dealt with the detail. Now that's not entirely true, but that's where I found myself. You know, yes, it's true, I've had amazing people around me that have supported me with that detail, but it was almost, I was visibly allowing that imposter monster, you know, in that moment, that gremlin to take over. And I was actually talking myself out of my own value openly to, you know, in this experience. And so that's something that I'm sort of playing around with and thinking about in this time. So I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the chats. So thank you, Natasha, for doing that.
There we go. I can read some of them out for you.
Yeah, is that all right? Can you do that?
Yeah, of course, of course. So Jess, she said, I learned my limits and promised not to let them repeat. Moving forward, I know that I won't accept, and I will call out what I think is not right for myself or colleagues. And I also felt that I may want to leave schools at times as well, she said there.
Yeah, and you know, to be in that place it's a really difficult place to be, and sometimes I think it's, you know, sometimes, you know, you do have to make that decision to leave a space, and that's what I did, and perhaps find another space where it doesn't feel like that.
And then Anu said, definitely during teacher training was a challenging experience for her. I think whenever I had a less than perfect lesson observation, I thought I was failing. A key lesson was to lean on others and not be afraid to ask for help. That's what I said actually as well. It didn't make me less weak. To anybody else going through the tough time that teacher training was, I'd let them be kind to themselves and not be afraid to fail forwards.
Absolutely, because we do learn from our mistakes, and I can see what Jess has just said, that she did leave the space and are much stronger and better off for it. So it's great to hear, Jess. We'll perhaps have a look at those if we've got some time. towards the end. Somebody else, I just had a quick scan. Somebody else talked about this idea of what you can control and what you can't. And what I found was quite a useful tool is Stephen Covey's circle of influence. So it was good for me to sit and actually think about what's in my control and what isn't. And what was in my control in the end was the decisions I made about myself and what I needed to do next. And you know, when I was in the middle of it, what was also quite useful, I was privileged enough to have Andy Brown coach during some of that. It's visualizing where sort of, again, common theme, tree hugging, my dancing years, it was really helpful for me to visualize myself as a tree. And through clever questioning, Angie sort of got me to the point where I was an ancient oak tree rooted into the ground, unswaying, and still standing there after many a storm over time. So that was a really helpful exercise for me as well. So I'm just sharing some of these in the hope that if you need you know, found yourself in this position, it might be quite useful to use that visualizing. Also, the power of networks, you know, really in terms of what did I do next? There was yesterday, V and Deborah had a conversation around this idea of that you know, we tend and befriend response to stress, and I caught some of it on Twitter, so I haven't listened to it in depth, so I will do that when I'm back after this weekend. But this idea that, you know, we as human beings, our human response to stress, as well as fight and flight, there is an alternative about tending to the young and relying on others for connection and support. And the power of a network is incredible. WomenEd has been an incredible community. And I first heard about WomenEd through a women leadership course that I was doing, and Vivian was part of that. And she came and presented. And of course, then she said, but if I want to be part of WomenEd, I have to get myself on Twitter, which I did. And you know, Diverse Educators, WomenEd, Heads Up, these are all networks that I am now either directly or sort of through conferences and attending other webinars have been part of, which has been brilliant, because actually it was up until this point that because of Twitter and because of these spaces, what we do is we tend to sing about our successes, don't we? We tend to share the things that are going really, really well, and because of that fear of failure, because of the way in which we perhaps see it, I felt very alone and isolated in what I was experiencing, and I didn't really I hadn't seen or known that other people had similar. And it wasn't until I spoke to, you know, some professionals to seek advice that I realized that actually, you know, it wasn't just me, and there is a power in sharing stories and narratives. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's that fear of sharing. Sometimes it's because we can't share the full story. Sometimes it's just because, you know, we just don't have that safe space to have those conversations. So when I go back to this idea of this sort of you know, the tend and befriend response, you know, sort of that idea of nurturing. My young'un is now 23, so sort of nurturing of the young. Sorry, 20. Did I say 20 or 33? 23. So not needing any tending from me at the moment. So actually, what I did is I tended to the young in me. I felt very much that I went back to the beginning of who I was, what my purpose was. You know, seeking out others and reaching out to others for that connection and support in order to work through the sense of me. My next steps. And it was because of those fabulous human beings that I met through these networks that made me realize I wasn't alone in my experience, and actually this was just the beginning. Education wasn't done, and it was my beginning of failing forward in my journey towards that. So I've certainly, you know, I know that that nothing is certain, but I do also know that anything is possible. And you know, I don't have to lose who I am and what I'm doing, and I'm not failing backwards, but failing forwards, and continuing towards that success. And I am now pleased to be able to share with you today. I've started an interim role as a head of school in an SEMH school. I am now had an opportunity applied for school improvement lead exec head within the Centre Trust, and I got that position. So, you know, sometimes those failings they often are taking you to where you want to be next. So just sort of final thoughts from me, really. Don't just bring a seat. As Hilary Goldsmith says, if there isn't a seat at the table, be the one who buys the chairs. Light the way and create a space where there are seats for others to bring their narrative to the table in a safe space. And most of all, do it with style. And if necessary, as Claire said, break those tables and create communities so that we can, as women, thrive, not just survive.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Bianca, and congratulations. That's awesome news. You help our data. But it's how important the message was critical and really important for leaders to hear, because perfectionism isn't there. I've not come across any leader that would say perfectionism serves them well. So thank you for being so honest and sharing so openly. And Natasha, anything you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to thank you for your authenticity. I think that, and loads of people have commented on that as well. I think telling your story and being authentic just makes us all feel comfortable with, well, actually, do you know what, we're not going to be perfect and it's not going to be perfect, but actually look how successful you've been from, you know, being open and honest with yourself and with everybody else as well. So thank you so much, Bianca, again.
No, thank you.
Nicola, ready? Oh, she's frozen. That'd be hilarious if I now have to.
Okay, Nicola, can you hear us? Okay, we'll give Nicola a moment before hopefully she can come back in. That always happens, doesn't it? In that like critical moment.
Yeah, of course. She was fine before and all in and stuff. So that's fine. So really just to introduce Nicola, if you want
I'm just trying to sort out my technological issues of being able to get my.
We can. Oh yeah, you're back now. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. Your internet's
I'm just trying to see if I can screen share, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be coming up. So if you just give me a second.
No worries.
I'm going to share my downloads and then I'm going to get it up from there because it's not showing from where I want it to. So
no problem at all. While Nicola's bringing.
Can you see that? Okay, I'm just getting it up.
Yes. Yeah.
So we can see, Nicola, that you have screen sharing mode, but nothing's coming up yet.
Okay. I'm not sure that it's going to work, to be honest, because I've got it. So what I'll do is I'll probably just.
We can see your screen. We can see your screen now. Your directory. Maybe try again.
Yeah, no, it's okay. To be honest, struggling with it's at the bottom, but it's not coming up to be able to show you. So I'm just gonna get up my presentation, and I'll probably just throw it because it's the easiest thing for me to do.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Nicola, you're welcome to email it to myself or
folks.
Natasha.
Okay, I mean, I tried, although I don't actually have your email addresses. So,
okay, what are you comfortable with doing?
Without it, okay. So
okay,
I'll just
go for it.
Go through. So, hi folks. I'm talking to you today about effective time management strategies, and this is from the perspective of the morning session, which is what if we broke the table. So I've written a number of blogs in my time, and a couple of these blogs link well to the session I'm doing today. So the first thing I just want to kind of give you a bit of an insight to is who I am as a person. Okay, so I'm Nicola Mooney. I'm a rushed off my feet mum of 4. I'm a deputy head teacher who's married to another deputy head teacher, and I'm a teacher of over 20 years. I have been part of the MTPT project for the last 4 or 5 years. And within that, I'm the diversity and inclusion team member, and I'm also the fertility advocate. I'm a Women Ed network lead for the Southwest, and I'm a member of the ASCL Women Leaders Network. I've mentioned already that I am an EduBlogger. I'm a student. During COVID, I've done both NASENCO and NPQH, and my husband and I run a small holding at home. And one of the things that I find people say all the time to me is, oh, you're a Wonder Woman. And I really kind of just want to say that I'm not. I just do a lot of things in batches, in certain time blocks. But I'm actually just a determined mum who thinks that they should be able to have it all. And I also think that other people should be able to have it all. So thinking of this table, this metaphorical table, and it has kind of over the weekend progressed from a boardroom table to perhaps even being a table that we sit at to eat at. And Emma Shepherd yesterday was very much using the metaphor of it of being a table that may be presenting food to us. And so kind of with that kind of food front, my message really is about, well, you know, if we're breaking this table, how are we going to keep spinning the plates? These aren't just plates that are in our work life, these are also the plates in our home life. And so what I really want to frame today is the idea of having it all but not doing it all. And I've got 10 key things that I want to talk to you about in order for you to hopefully have some takeaways to help you be able to have it all but not have to do it all. So whilst I'm talking about this from the perspective of being a senior leader and a parent, and all of those other things that I do within my own home life, I want to very much share that that may not be where you are yet. It may not be something that you actually want to do. It may be something that you're aspiring to do, but just aren't yet at that point. And I kind of think that the idea that you can't be what you can't see is a really useful kind of thought process, and hopefully within our networks we'll be able to start and see people who are able to do these things and do them successfully without having meltdowns. I just want to share with you, I've had a really hard week. So some of these messages are messages I need to remind myself of. I certainly have written about these things because they are things that I find hard. I've had various points in my life where I've worked over 70 hours a week, and in working over 70 hours a week, I know that that's not sustainable. It's not healthy for my family, and it's not fair for my family. And certainly you kind of hit a point of where you're working so hard that your work quality just isn't particularly good. And that's something that I would kind of share, is that there is kind of an optimal amount of work that you do. And sometimes just by doing more and more and more means that your quality actually goes back. So think about that optimal point. So my 10 messages are, starting with number 1, batching tasks. Being able to put things together so that you can do them all in one go. There is a myth of being able to multitask, and every time you have to code switch, those constant interruptions actually slowed you down. And so if you think about setting homework, I was listening to a podcast on Naylor's Natter, and Amy Forrester was talking about the fact that one of the things that she does is she goes into the homework app, she sets 5 weeks worth of homework, and then she forward dates them so that the students can go through them, they appear at the right time. And that saves in all of those kind of thought processes of when you code switch, you have to then get yourself into that space of thinking about, what's this task I've got to do? How do I do the task? And by doing it all in one go, you'll save for yourself quite a lot of time. So save administration tasks to when you are having a bit of an energy low, because you don't need to really think hard about this stuff. I'm going to talk more about energy levels a little bit later, but when you are doing monotonous administrative tasks, do those things at a time of day where you are feeling a little bit lower in your energy levels. So for me, that would be kind of in the afternoon, after lunch. It might be at about 7 o'clock in the evening, if I had a spare hour at that point. And so be aware of your own energy highs and energy low times, and build that into your lifestyle. So I avoid having meetings after lunch because I know that people won't get the best version of me, and I tend to kind of try and forward plan my meetings so that I know exactly when they're going to be. So if you are doing photocopying, maybe do photocopying for your whole week in one go and save having to go back and back and back and back and forward constantly, just because that means that you then know that that is ticked off your list. Sometimes we can feel really weighed down by the amount of things that we need to have in the forefront of our mind. This is about kind of spinning all those plates. And if you can put more things onto one plate, but get that plate sorted out more quickly, then that's one thing less that you've got to think about doing at some other point. The next one I want to talk about, this is number 2, is emails. Technology should be a servant and not the master. We can't multitask. And so if you are sitting there working, and this one particularly is a reminder for myself, because this one I'm particularly bad at, but I'll be sitting there doing some work and I'll hear a ping, or I'll see a little flash in the bottom right hand side of the corner of my screen, and I'll go, oh, I've had an email. That has to be more important than what I'm doing right now. And so I've stopped and I've looked at that email, and then I've got to then think about how I can get back onto the track of the task that I'm doing. So again, this is a little bit like batching, but emails should be done in a way that you can manage them effectively. As senior leaders, we have a ridiculous numbers of emails. Some of them we're just copied into, some of them we have to action. And so if you're not sure whether you need to action an email, don't read it. Don't read it until you have time for it. Something that I do is I set myself half an hour at some point in the school day where I will sit and read those emails. I had some really good advice as part of my MPQH coaching that I had. So I had some really good coaching, because I went to my coach and said, I really struggle sometimes with time management. What can I do? And he said that if you then set emails for your energy low time, then this is a really good way of getting through them. And he said, read them only once. So what I tend to do is I read and I respond straight away. And if that requires a follow-up, that person will then email me again and again. Next time I have my emails open, I'm ready to look at them, I can then go through those emails again. So that's number 2. Emails are a massive source. I mean, there's so many arguments on Twitter this summer about emails, and what I'd say is that the reason that people argue about it is because there isn't a one-shape-fits-all solution to this. Some of us actually feel that we'd rather continue to have that contact in times where we're not actually at work. So I personally find that reading emails during my home time is the only way I can actually manage with them. People talk about delayed sends and all this kind of thing. You've got to do what's right for you, and you've got to do what's right for your organisation. I always make sure that I've got a little note at the bottom of my email saying I don't expect anyone to respond to these emails outside of work hours, but I read and respond to emails during my downtime. Now, whether that's something that fits with other people's organisations or not, that's entirely up to yourself. But if you have your own system that suits you as an individual for your emails, then use that system and stick to that system. Number 3 is about thinking time. All of us need to use some sort of creativity in our roles. And it's really hard to use creativity if you are feeling rushed off your feet. So when your treadmill feels like it's set too fast and you can't quite keep up with everything you're supposed to be doing, it's sometimes really hard to then have that good quality thinking time. And so what I suggest is that people have time in their day where they can have some good quality thinking time, and that can be thinking about conversations you're going to have. It can be thinking about how to structure a to-do list that you're doing in your family time, but it needs to be without interruption. And so think about your day. For me, I have just gone from having a 45-minute commute to a 15-minute commute, and that 45-minute commute was great because I could use that as my thinking time. Now I've got a 15-minute commute and I take my eldest son to school. So if I try to have that thinking time, I can't do it. So I've now got to kind of rework my schedule so that I can find some good quality thinking time. I tend to find that a lot of my ideas come in the bath. So having a bath is quite a good way to getting some good quality thinking time, but build that into your schedule. You need to have thinking time when you're uninterrupted. And as a parent of 4 children, trying to get anything that's uninterrupted is quite tricky. So, for yourselves, think about how you can make that fit. Number 4 is about delegation and knowing your monkeys. Again, through my MPQH tutor, he directed me to read a book called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey by Ken Blanchard, and it is absolutely brilliant. If you have never come across this book, buy it and read it. It's about £6, and the time it takes you to read the book, I guarantee you will have that time back in bucket loads. And it's the idea that if you are working in a school, you need to kind of stay in your lane, and you need to make sure that other people don't offload into your lane lots of their tasks. So one of the things that he suggests is knowing exactly what your role is and what your proverbial kind of monkeys. So if you think about the monkeys being jobs that or priorities that people have, as a senior leader walking around to the school, I can walk down a corridor and have 5 people speak to me. And in that time, they've offloaded their monkeys because they've had this conversation, they've passed on what they want me to do. And then I get to the end of the corridor. Cognitively, my head is spinning because I've got all these extra things I need to do. And my concern is that I won't remember them. So I often push these monkeys back. I'll say, right, that's fine. If it's something I feel that I need to action, then I will ask them to email me, because I will forget otherwise. And if it is something that I need to do, then absolutely that monkey is mine. So I need to go and then follow up, and I need to look after that monkey. But quite often, these monkeys actually belong to other people, and they just want a bit of help and support with a decision being made. And that is absolutely fine. And so you help them reframe their thinking into what they need to do as their next step during this conversation, and then you hand the monkey back so that they can then go and action that. So you're not taking on board lots and lots and lots of other people's monkeys, but you are role modeling to them how to be able to deal with their monkeys themselves, so that they are able in future maybe to know what to do with those monkeys. Number 5, and I've got to hurry up a minute because I've got only 4 minutes left, is boundaries and habits. I've just recently read Atomic Habits, and it is absolutely fabulous book. And it kind of links into lots of things that I'd already done. But the idea that if you have got a routine that then becomes a habit, it's dead easy just to stick with it. So if you've got your daily and weekly routines in place, you don't then need that cognitive load of, well, what am I doing today? You kind of know what you're doing. And it means that you don't have to rely on motivation so much when it's a habit, because you can just stick to the routine that you're doing those things at those times. And what I would say is that if you do have things that require motivation, then you really have to kind of in your schedule prioritize to, as we say, kind of eat that frog first, so it's something that's not kind of hanging over you. So if I think about difficult conversations I have to have in a day, I might go and do that first thing, so that I don't then have to think, oh gosh, I've got this kind of thing in the background that I need to think about, and then I can kind of feel the weight gone off my shoulders because I've then dealt with it. Then the other one is learn to say no. It's a really important part of our own personal development to be able to say no to things that are not going to benefit ourselves, and that are just going to add to extra things that perhaps aren't in our lane. And so just being able to actually say, do you know what, I can see that that's something that's really useful, but maybe we can have a conversation about that at another point, because right now I don't really have time to do that thing. And then kind of check your motivation behind it. Sometimes we will accept things because they are things that we believe in. So just knowing what your values are, and in terms of being able to decide what things you do want to do spend more time on, and those things you don't want to spend more time on. Number 6 is prioritization and energy. So it's a little bit back to that thought of having energy high times and energy low times. Links also back into that sentence I've just been talking about saying no. And it's really important to be able to distinguish those important, unimportant, urgent, non-urgent parts of the quadrant. And then if there is something that's important and urgent, knowing that you actually need to then make time for that, where you can have a power hour of uninterrupted time when you can get into flow. For me, it used to be that my power hours would be before the start of the school day, and I would go to work really early. I'd have that power hour, and I would then in an uninterrupted way, be able to get onto things that were really my hard thinking. And then as I've changed jobs, I need to think about where my power hour is going to be. It currently sits between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m, which for me is not the ideal time for me, because then I find it difficult to get to sleep. So I'm in this process right now of actually changing my working practices during the day, because at the minute I'm finding some things quite tricky to get through. If you've got a to-do list or a bullet journaling or an effective planning system, spend time each day just making sure that you know what you're doing for that that day or that week. And be honest, if you don't have time to do stuff, tell people, look, I don't have time. So that's number 6. Going on to number 7, this one's really for senior leaders, and that's really the idea that don't hold a meetings for meeting's sake. If it is just information giving, then do it by email, and give yourself, if you do have the meeting, time to have follow-up action points. Avoid AOBs if they are really important things. We've all sat in meetings where we've been sitting there and then think that we've got a minute left of the meeting because you're doing the AOBs, and somebody then drops something on that really should have been a 20-minute action point on the agenda. So if you're a senior leader, avoid having those AOBs and make sure that things that are needing quality discussion actually get put onto the agenda. Number 8 is domestic husbandry. So having gone
Nick,
through
I'm
some
going
of
to
my
pause
working
you. That's okay.
practices of kind of 1 to 7, I'm now going to share with you how I manage as a mum of 4. And the first thing I do for domestic husbandry is I make sure that myself and my husband and my children all have roles to play within the house.
Hi, Nicola, I'm going to pause you where you are.
Yeah.
And I'd ask, would you mind on your Twitter account, we'll put it in the chat as well, could you put the 8.8, 8.9 and 0.10 so that people get those as well? It was really, really helpful, and some great practical techniques. And I think the message that I took most strongly from what you're saying is the importance of understanding self, and that how you lead will be different from how I lead and potentially how Natasha leads. And that's one of the really powerful things of WomenEd, is that we can demonstrate different ways of being and different ways of leading, and we all resonate with different things. And so this idea of one size fits all is just not true. You know, it doesn't work for any of us. And I really appreciate the time that you took. Please do share it, and like I said, we'll put it in the chat to make sure people can carry on the conversation and share their ideas as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Natasha, would you like to introduce Tracy?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I'm trying to unmute. I'm good, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant to be here. I'm hoping I can share a screen. Shall I give it a go?
Yeah, give it a go while I'm. So Tracy's title is Teach Like a Queen, commanding leadership archetypes to disrupt the status quo. I'm quite excited about this, actually. So I can imagine that our chats is going to go absolutely crazy. I think following on from Nick, who's given us some real practical advice, me definitely, I was taking notes as she was going through that, and I'm definitely hoping that she will add all 10 points there into our chats. So Tracy is now going to lead our session. Are you okay there, Tracy? Is it?
I am. I don't appear to have permission to share my screen because I'm not a host, but I can work with whatever.
Let me withdraw and then give you again.
Okay. Aha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Too early, that's why. Yeah.
Hopefully you can see that.
Absolutely perfect.
Okay. Sorry.
Crown and everything.
Absolutely. And if you have a crown, please wear it and know that this is a table with thrones, not seats, but more of that in a second. Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is my first real, I suppose, WomenEd event, my first sort of toe in the water, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of the conference. My name is Tracy Lees, and I'm here ostensibly as a female leader and as the co-author of Teach Like a Queen, which happily is blurred because I was so organised, I blurred my background. Teach Like a Queen, which was written in direct response to 10% Braver. Now, before I go any further, I need to tell you that my children may come in, and that's a point of information and absolutely not an apology, even though they have been briefed and bribed, because whilst we are not subscribing to the patriarchy in this house, sometimes golf wins over me. So just to say that I am very much indebted to WomenEd. My sort of involvement with WomenEd came in lockdown, the very first lockdown. As I was reading 10% Braver, the world slowed down. I thought that's a really good time to finish this book that's been sat there glaring at me. And just before lockdown, I went to see the musical Six, which is about the wives of Henry VIII. And this sort of started my brother and I, who co-wrote the book with me, into this journey that became Teach Like a Queen. And WomenEd were absolutely instrumental. In fact, Vivian Porritt, OBE, wrote the foreword. And I suppose sitting on Zoom today is a little bit like that first conversation where I felt like I was talking to Beyonce and I was trying really hard to play it cool. So off we go. But just to say, since the book, I've basically commandeered any platform, any opportunity to reiterate the same messages that I know we've been hearing all weekend about raising our voices and being heard, taking up space and becoming the leaders that the profession needs and wants. So I've split this into 3 sections within the theme of if there isn't a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is setting this table. So the context, why do we need strong female archetypes at this table? Where does that come from? And then we're going to populate the table. So who sat around this table? And then we're going to try to smash the table to pieces. That's the plan. So the whole thing about the book, we use this recurring message, not, I suppose, unlike being 10% braver as a recurring message in that text, but we talk about a ripple effect, and we talk about how we all have a pebble. And we can all affect change. And we're talking here within the context of WomenEd about very big systemic problems and issues that aren't necessarily specific to teaching, because actually there's a bigger problem of a lack of representation, a lack of diversity. That's a bigger issue. And I think sometimes it's really easy to think it can be somebody else's problem. Because, you know, what's my little role going to be? So we talk about know the value of your pebble and use it with intent. And the fact that you're all here this morning suggests that you all know about your pebble, and maybe some of you have launched it already, and maybe some of you are watching the ripples unfold. But it really has to be, from our point of view, a combined approach. So setting the table. So in completing the research for the book, I did some action research, and I should say that the idea behind the book was it was CPD for perhaps people who don't like reading CPD, and it is it does draw on some popular culture, which I hope is not to say that it's without substance, but part of the research completed was all about interviewing these power women that form case studies in the book. And I knew these women, I had worked with some of these women, I certainly admired these women, and I went to them and asked them to talk to me about their leadership journey. Now, we're probably all familiar with the iceberg illusion. I know in my school we're about to wheel that out again in readiness for year 11 mocks. But I think this is never more true when we are talking about female leadership, because when I was talking to these women I'd admired, I'd worked with, and I was really just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And actually what became clear is there was so much struggle underneath in some cases. Almost every woman that I interviewed had some level of imposter syndrome, which absolutely blew my mind, because these were high performing women who were really making a difference. There was a lot of sacrifice. There was a lot of misogyny that had been overcome. There were lots of pulls on these women. And it was so interesting to me, because even when I was coming from this informed place, this curiosity about female leadership and considering myself reasonably kind of informed, like everybody else, I had been fooled. I had been fooled by just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And I think that is really important when we think about the women that we admire, because that's what this book is about. This book is about taking women that we admire and perhaps commandeering a little of that archetype. That isn't to say you're going to go in, we've got Lady Gaga in the book, you're not going to go in a cover lesson in a meat dress, quite clearly, on many levels, that would not be okay. But it's about tapping into that sort of energy. Early in my career, 11 years ago, was when I began as a middle leader, and I was a head of year. And I remember us having these meetings, these year team meetings, and I was so uncomfortable sitting at the front of the meeting. And it was around that time when I used to watch a lot of The Apprentice. So I used to watch Karen Brady, and I used to look at how she held herself. I used to look at how she presented, and I used to sort of draw on that. Now, some years later, I'm very clearly not Karen Brady, but for that small time in my leadership journey, where I was just beginning to step out of my lane, to use a phrase that we've already heard today, that was incredibly empowering for me. So when we talk about these archetypes of powerful women, and we refer to them in the book as queens, it's not this, okay? It is not, you have the same hours in the day as Beyonce. It is not pitting women against each other. It is not in any way intended to be reductive. These are tropes that you can draw on to be empowered, and we're going to look at some of them now. Okay, so let's populate this table. So if I tell you in the book, we have 7 queens. We've mapped them to the Nolan Principles. As you probably are aware, the Nolan Principles came about in the 1990s under John Major's government as a means of offering a sort of ethical yardstick against which public servants, MPs, against which their kind of ethics and morality could be measured. And phew, I'm so glad they sorted that out, and that's never occurred since. So we've taken the Nolan Principles, which are also now on the NPQH, which I would love to say I knew, and that's why we picked them, but that is absolutely not the case. That's a massive coincidence, but I'm going to claim otherwise if I'm asked. So we've taken those 7 leadership behaviours, things like accountability, things like selflessness, and we've mapped them with 7 queens from popular culture. Now, some of these queens are Michelle Obama and Jacinda Ardern, who are very obvious leaders, who are it's very easy to see how you can draw on the success of those women. But we've also got some other people in there, like, as I've already mentioned, Lady Gaga, and we'll talk about her in a second. We've also got RuPaul. RuPaul's crown is the one with the lips on it, because that archetype is about truth and about honesty, especially when we would much rather not be. We've also got people like Kim Kardashian and Meghan Markle, and some of what we talk about in the book is actually, as women, a lot of the time we fear disapproval. We are hardwired to nurture. This is all referenced, by the way, and sourced in the book, but we are hardwired to nurture, and therefore dealing with criticism is often a reason why women aren't especially keen to lead. And I would say, when I was writing this book and I was a bit bored with being on duty, somebody said to me, you know, being on duty as in like the dinner queue, somebody said, just go in like you're Michelle Obama. And that really changed my day. So this is all about a little bit of the success of these queens and what we can take from them. And just as a reminder, they are the Nolan Principles. And in the book, we kind of speak about a Venn diagram with leadership, ethical leadership in the middle. And actually, the ethical leadership is the total of the other traits. So I'm going to just talk very quickly about a couple of our queens. So I've already mentioned Meghan Markle. I specifically chose Meghan Markle because she is divisive, because she has a potency about her, and because that provokes strong reactions. And I think there are masses of lessons in there for us as female leaders, because from the men I interviewed, the male leaders who I interviewed also as part of the book, and also I'm married to a deputy head teacher, it's very clear that there is a gendered response. Speaking from my own research, there's a gendered response to criticism. And actually, as women, what I found was we hold ourselves to a slightly higher standard. And actually, a lot of the leaders that I interviewed would go home and really ruminate and really give a lot of oxygen and a lot of time to criticism in a way that men did not. So leadership, the message I get from that is that actually leadership is nowhere near as personal as we can assume. And I've had this exactly this week, where something I'd felt was a criticism, and I just had to keep saying to myself, it's not personal, it's a job, it's not personal, and actually drawing on that archetype. So the next queen I wanted to talk about is about integrity, and Jacinda Ardern, I think, is a beloved, particularly beloved by women, leader, because she is doing leadership differently, and my children are fighting, but I can be okay with that. She has this unapologetic, humane, compassionate lens from which it basically informs all of her leadership. So all these experiences that women have as mothers or aunties or sisters, we can draw on that to actually make our leadership better. And it comes across very clearly in the book, the tension between motherhood and leadership. And I spoke to, it's actually the case study in the Malala chapter, and this was an executive head who, her view was that women who are mothers make better teachers, because when you start to view a child, view a student as someone's child, that kind of importance, that kind of gravitas is heightened. Lady Gaga, again, not an obvious female leader, but somebody who is unapologetically talented and does not pretend to be anything other than the talented polymath that she is. And that's another thing that came out of the research, was actually some women had downplayed some of their achievements, or downplayed perhaps some of their capability, because they didn't want to intimidate, they didn't want to outshine. So my message is, we absolutely are okay with taking up that space. And actually that's a necessary part of disrupting the status quo. Malala, I suppose, is the chapter in the book that resonates most closely with what WomenEd is about. It's about when you get into a place of leadership, at that point, you owe it to other women. You owe it to other women to champion them. If you're mentoring them officially or unofficially, again, the research told us that there was an unconscious bias when we mentor men, that we make an assumption that they want to lead. We need to make that same assumption for women if we are going to bring about change. And then the ideal outcome is that we smash the table. If the table is allegorically patriarchy, we need to disrupt it, because that system doesn't serve us. And if we are not disrupting that system and the status quo, then we are endorsing it, and we are enabling it, and we are facilitating it. And actually, as women in leadership, as teachers, as a community, we have that power. So just a few queen moves to leave you with. And again, these came out of the research. Limit apologizing. As women, we are so quick to apologize and assume responsibility. So instead of apologizing, thank people. So rather than, I'm sorry you had to wait, thanks for your patience. I'm sorry my children are fighting. Thanks for understanding that I'm a working mum. Try not to court approval in the same way that we perhaps wouldn't with our students, because that is not a good enough metric of leadership. Champion, uplift, and empower other women. I would love to be able to tell you that if women aren't succeeding, it's because there are better women in those jobs, but that is absolutely not what the research tells us. It tells us it's actually men. And in my own personal experience, mediocre men. Tune out criticism, keep focused on your goals, absolutely respond to criticism if there's something founded, but also have some faith in yourself. Be authentic, own your talents, do not pretend to be less talented, less capable, or less brilliant simply because it might intimidate somebody. Use the lens of compassion And when we've just heard this with Nicola, respect other people's boundaries and enforce your own, because nobody is ever going to respect you less because you enforce boundaries, but they might if you do everybody's job just because you're thrilled to have a leadership post. So I've miraculously kept that within time. Could talk all day about the research that we did, and I've actually got another book that's a similar kind of model that's out for peer review at the moment. Absolutely thrilled. I'm looking forward to seeing more queens leading in education, and I'm absolutely grateful and indebted to the work of WomenEd for bringing me here. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Tracy. That was absolutely amazing, and definitely having more queens around is like inspirational to everybody listening. And there's lots and lots of comments as well. So make sure you do go through all of those as well, because you've got some lots of positive feedback and lots of the Queen can also move with greater choice and agility than any other piece on the chessboard, especially the King. So
she outranks the King. That's all I'm saying.
Love it, love it. So thank you again for your session, and I'm sure everybody, could you actually add in the chat the books that you've read and that you want to share with us and what you've done as well. So obviously meeting Vivian is like meeting Beyonce. She is our queen. Absolutely. Liz, are you ready to introduce Angeline?
I am, and thank you, Tracy. That was awesome. Loved it. And now I'm really excited to introduce, I don't know if I've ever actually introduced Angeline before, but Angeline is part of our European team. She's one of the leaders for WomenEd Deutschland. So welcome, Germany, and has done an extraordinary job over the last couple of years of building such a strong team, a regional. It's the only country outside of the UK that has a regional network as well as a national network. So I want to do a big shout out for Angeline and the work that she does to support women in education. You're absolutely amazing, Angeline, and it's a privilege. Hopefully you're on, I can see. I can't see you though, but hopefully you're there. Angeline, go for it.
Thank you. Yeah, I am here. My video is on. I hope you can hear me as well. I hope you can see my screen as well onto the PowerPoint, not the presenter mode. Hopefully that's all going well, Natasha. I hope I can see you. So
yeah, sorry, we can see like the full screen, not just the presenter mode at the moment. That's all, Angeline.
So you can see yourself again. I see.
No, we can't see ourselves. We can just see the top of your tabs, your website tabs.
I think that's a Google slide thing. So I won't be able to change that, unfortunately. But thank you for understanding, everyone. Yeah, and so thank you for joining me, and also thank you, WomenEd, for the invitation to speak. We've had so many amazing speakers today who have shared their stories, and I think stories are obviously a great source of information. We can share life experiences, work experiences. Sometimes our stories become our signature stories. And I think stories really have four intentions, is what I learned from Robert Garmston in his book, The Art of Storytelling. So they can shift our perceptions. That's one. The second thing is that they can invite learning. And they can also inspire action, and they can help us seek a desired state as well. And so these four intentions of stories, and I was reminded of that with all of the great stories that we've heard from Bianca and Tracy and Nicola. And so thank you so much for sharing yours. And so I'd also like to share mine, because I think that, if we want to be an advocate for equity, whether it be gender equity or any other intersection, we have to understand ourselves. And I think that's really essential, so that we can understand our why. And so being an advocate, my story plays a part in it, and I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit in that way. I was born in Malaysia. My cultural heritage is Chinese. We spoke a mix of Hokkien and English at home. And when we migrated to Australia, my English was, I guess, more like a Chinglish, and I struggled and was labeled as having a language deficit. I was an English as a second language student, and it was a challenge for me. And so you can imagine that I experienced racism in schools, and I also but it was something that I was able to overcome, and obviously it's led me here today. And I started teaching internationally in China after a couple of years teaching in Australia. And in China, where I taught, I was so excited to go back and learn about my cultural heritage and to really experience, my not just as a teaching professionally, but also personally. I thought it was somewhere I could grow. Now, I was in my mid-20s, and I was pretty naive to think that, I think, because in the end, I found that I didn't look like what the people there at the time thought Australians looked like. And so people couldn't understand why, although I learnt Mandarin much faster than some of my colleagues, because it's quite similar to the Chinese dialect I speak at home, I was never speaking Mandarin good enough, and they couldn't understand that I wasn't Chinese and I didn't fit in. Now, I also have and so that experience really taught me that people have stereotypical views about things, and they're going to judge you for that. And that made me kind of delve into trying to understand what some cultural norms are, how stereotypes work, and what that implies for how we perceive either an Australian or how we perceive people in leadership, and what the seat at the table could mean for us. Now, in 2005, I moved to Germany, where I've been a homeroom teacher, music specialist, a curriculum coordinator, and a whole bunch of other roles. And that's where I work now. I work 2 days part-time as a curriculum coordinator for the primary years program. It's an IB curriculum. And I work there 2 days a week part-time. And I also work part-time for the Council of International Schools, where I design and deliver materials related to diversity, equity, and inclusion to support schools with their acceleration of that in their school cultures. And so I've made a lot of learning over the years, obviously, and so what I wanted to share as well is that, to understand our own journeys makes understand why we're so passionate about certain things in schools. So for me, I share this story with you because I want to highlight that I'm really passionate about valuing diversity as a fact, a right, and a resource, and including specifically valuing multilingualism. So instead of seeing something as a deficit, it's something that really should be seen as a strength. And I also think that we need to value that our role in schools is to help people understand who they are and to value who they are and to keep them safe, because I think that our number one job in schools is to safeguard students and safeguarding them from all forms of harm. And a harm could be the sexism that you can have because we live in a patriarchal society. And the harm can be racism because we live in a society that in Australia where it was colonized, and in one that still where supremely, a white culture is what is seen as valuable. And so when all of these messages are part of the hidden curriculum that we have around us, those are the things that form those cultural norms that we see and are exposed to. And all of these also inform the fact that, we still see that table as something that we want to have a seat at, right? And so those are influenced also by the cultural norms. Now, I want you to imagine a carrot. What do you visualize? Because I want you to think about that, because I want to drive home the point of valuing diversity and why we need to advocate for valuing it and creating inclusive spaces. So I hope you have this picture of a carrot in your head. Yeah. Now, if you ask anyone to imagine a carrot, ask a child to draw a carrot, you'll get many variations of this. And our common view of what we find in supermarkets, it will look like this, right? So especially in EU supermarkets where there are regulations and things. Now, if you're a fan of like MasterChef and all of these kind of cooking shows, or if you're a foodie yourself, and you're getting all fancy, you might think of carrots as this. And carrots also grow like this. Yeah. And so when trying to find images of carrots that have overcome barriers in the soil beneath them as they strove to grow, I was like searching and I was putting in organic carrots and natural carrots, but not many images came up. Now, this was from a stock photo categorized as deformed carrots. Now, in societies that kind of repeatedly share one image of what something is supposed to look like, when you don't fit that image, you may be seen as something that is of lesser value, and that you're kind of classified as, in these cases with the carrots, as deformed, right? So asking you now, would you buy these carrots and eat them? Now, I learned the story of behind baby carrots, and I want to share that story with you too, because it really made me think of education in comparison. There's a carrot farmer, Mike Urasek from California, and he was regularly throwing away 70% of what he produced, up to 400 tons of carrots, because the carrots did not look like a carrot. So these perfectly nutritious edible carrots that according to supermarket standards were ugly, they were deformed. And so he decided that instead of throwing them away, he could whittle down the ones that didn't fit society's image of a carrot to what we now know as the baby carrot. Now, is the baby carrot then how we feel when we try to fit the norm? Are we whittling ourselves down to try to be, normal, whatever normal is anyway, which I don't think really exists? And what if like I can't change the color of my skin, my sexual orientation, the family I was born into, the gender I identify with, my race, my ethnicity, her story? And yet I think we all feel this pressure to whittle down, and we cannot really feel like we can be truly who we are. Now, this has caused people to, not only there's been literally tons of wasted food, but there's wasted energies that we spend trying to fit in. And when we don't value the diversity of people, we're also wasting their ideas, them as a resource, their language is an interesting and wonderful way to see the world. And we're also sending these messages that you're not worthy, that because you don't look like this version, that you are not worthy. So I encourage you to obviously think the opposite and think, would you eat these carrots? And to think about and to see the value in diversity, and to move forward and to think, these are typical images of carrots. This is typical image of Australians, and these images we see coming at us in the media. And so when we have these pictures in our head, we see these singular stories that are stereotypes, and it's what we do with those stereotypes that really then can have an impact on someone. But those behaviors we can change and we can correct by learning more about people and learning more about diversity as well. So I want to also then bring this back to education a little bit, and so think about what comes to your head when you think of a CEO or a CFO, and thank goodness Liz Free is there, being that CEO model in a picture that we rarely see, especially here in Western Europe. And so what do you think of a head of state? And Tracy mentioned Jacinda Ardern, but we seldom saw such heads of states. And so imagine a school leader as well. And I'm sure some of you who are school leaders in the audience may have been overlooked and been in the room, and someone else thought someone else was the school leader. And I certainly have had that happen to me a lot. And I'm not a school leader, but I've had a lot of people think that someone else was the coordinator or someone else was leading the workshop because they didn't think it was someone who looked like me. So I also want you to think about because I think we're all here, and we're here to uplift and empower women. But I also don't want us to forget why we're doing all of this, and that is because we're here. We are here for the students, right? We want to be better and to better serve the students under our care. And so I want you to imagine what a successful school graduate looks like. So what do you visualize? And there's a really strong narrative that that what parents want is for them to be successful, maybe go to an Ivy League university or to get into university itself. And what I found with hosting a lot of parent information evenings is that there are two things. Parents want their children to be happy, and they want them to be successful. And so I think this image of what it means to be successful, if that is also a singular image, then that's really going to impact how we value diversity in our schools, because it's constantly telling us that we have to strive to be a certain way to either fit in and then to be successful in that system. So yes, we need to disrupt the system. We've heard it a lot today from everyone. You know, Bucky said systemic changes is what we need. Tracy said we need to smash the table to pieces. And I would agree with this, because I think if we really value and respect and develop diverse communities, instead of whittling individual students down in our systems like those baby carrots. Yeah. And we see them for who they are and what their potential is. And that goes back to, like, I believe that we must be totally inclusive. And for me, total inclusivity is an action that leaders, teachers, students, and parents can all participate in, and board members too. And that being totally inclusive means recognizing, valuing, protecting, and nurturing diverse identities, including those of race, gender, sexual orientation, class, disability, age, religion, and language, and a host of many other identity markers in an intersectional approach. So I'd like to spend a bit of time that I have left talking about another story, and that's the story of fair trade coffee. Because sometimes I think we look at what we want, if we want to disrupt, if we want to smash the table, and if we want to do things absolutely differently, it's really hard, I think, to envision what that might be like. And it was probably the same with selling coffee at one point, but ethical renewals are possible, and things can also be ethical and economical, right? Because sometimes we get told that, oh, that we can't do that because it hasn't been done before, which is the most dangerous thing you could say. And so I want to make the point that education is a service industry, and while it can be big business for some of our schools, actually the business of education is to serve the students in our care. And even in the business world, ethical renewals are possible, such as can be seen with fair trade partnerships. So in 1973, Fair Trade Original was established in the Netherlands and has imported coffee from cooperatives of small farmers in Guatemala. And the fair coffee concept really paved a pathway for fair trading across other products like tea, cocoa, sugar, and more. Now, building on this, let us view coffee as a metaphor for schooling. Now, educators, we have made and consumed multiple cups of coffee, and we've done this routinely. We drink it, we enjoy it, and we've come to rely on it. And sometimes we spill a cup, and it was not our intention to spill anything. And we made a mess, but we aren't going to leave it there. We clean it up and then perhaps consider how we can invest in a sealable thermo mug that not only prevents spills, but maybe keeps our coffee hot for longer. Now, our current educational system is not too dissimilar. We have contributed to upholding schooling models that have caused harm to students, and yet we routinely brew the same blend, and we do so regularly. And only when maybe an accident happens, like a serious incident occurs, or maybe when alumni publicly calls the school out for being, you know, racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, that we feel like we take the responsibility. And so I would encourage you to think about how, instead of waiting for something to spill, thinking about how we can redesign our schools and our concepts of gathering, like that, you know, disrupting that table completely, and thinking about how maybe we can create liberated art out of spilled coffee, as you can see in my PowerPoint design here as well. And to help us kind of think of that too, Jacqueline Woodson, who is an author and a poet, she's written some picture books that have been very popular. And in the year We Learn to Fly, she wrote, sometimes the first step toward change is closing our eyes, taking a breath, and imagining a completely different way. And I believe that this is, what we owe our students. We owe them to create a totally inclusive school for all of the students under our care. And in order for us to do that, I think that we need to engage and commit to being an advocate for that. And I encourage you to do so. And I'm going to link put a link to this into the chat, for you, so that you have a link to this, what I'm calling the 7 I's of an advocacy stance. So that includes being intentional, invitational, inquiry-driven, interactive, intrepid, impactful, and interconnected. So you can read about that and ask yourself the questions: which stance are you most capable in, and maybe which stance you need to strengthen so you can be an advocate that all our students need. So thank you so much, everyone. That's 20 minutes. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Angeline. What a beautiful session. I found your storytelling was beautifully done to act as provocation and to really get us thinking in a different way. So thank you for your time today. I will definitely be looking at my carrots.
Thank you. And thanks, Liz, also for writing a review for the book. I think you're on the back cover now.
Woo, there we go.
It's coming
Bravo.
out in November. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited for you, Angeline. It's when I read the copy, a great resource for all of our schools, and particularly those actually for all schools, but in our schools in international sector, where we have such a diverse student population in many of our schools. We have a long way to go. So any resources we can have to support us, all the better. Thank you for everything you do, Angeline.
Thanks, Liz.
Great as always.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Now we move over to Jaya. Jaya, are you there? I feel like I'm doing like Eurovision here.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Lovely. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, it is Jaya.
Jaya. Okay, great. I'd always like to check. So thank you so much for joining us. You're going to be delivering a session on Towards a Table Where Colour Matters for the Right Reasons. Are you going to share your slides, Jaya? And are you able to do that?
Yeah, let me try. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect.
Great, go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, and thanks, Natasha. So the topic of my talk is a table where color matters for the right reason. And when Natasha and I were talking about doing this talk, that was a while ago, and some of the content does talk about a table where color matters for the right reason. But as I was researching and thinking about this and taking notes, I have voice notes and I just scribble notes that, as I was thinking and clearing my head, I thought a lot about something. Something came up really a lot for me, and that is how I process when I am faced with microaggressions. So my talk is going to be how can we build the table, and also how in the face of biases and microaggressions, how can we personally process those things. So a little bit about me. I am Jaya Hiranandani, and I was born and I grew up bilingual in a city, Jodhpur. It's also called the Blue City in Rajasthan, India. So I started speaking English just like the previous presenter when I went to school at 4, and so I would speak English at school, which was compulsory, and depending on who the principal was, we would be fined for not speaking English, but code switch to Hindi at home, unless I was with my cousins or my friends, and then it would be English or Hinglish, which is like the combination of Hindi and English. So that's a little bit about, my background. And talking about the table. What are the issues facing us? And a lot of what I'm going to say is influenced by the TED Talk and the work of Joan C. Williams. And she is one of the major figures in, she talks about the bias in workplace. And she, some of the things that I feel are structurally wrong about the table. And it has changed over time, and it's not as in your face anymore. And I am aware that I'm preaching to the choir here, and there are, we all know about a lot of these things, but I do want to quote research, and I want to talk about my experiences, and hopefully there's something new that people will take away from this. And microaggressions, of course, are everyday, subtle, intentional, and sometimes unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate some kind of bias towards historically marginalized groups. And they really negatively impact the well-being of the person who's on the receiving end. And for me, that happens because I'm not even sure if I should place some kind of behavior in the microaggression category. Was the person just having a bad day? Am I reading too much into this? So I kind of second guess myself, and it just takes so much brain space, and it's an unnecessary waste of energy. So, and it just always leaves me confused and dazed. And more apart from that, microaggressions can also take the form of secondary microaggressions, such as gaslighting or victim blaming. Researchers have recognized 15 categories of microaggressions, ranging from alien in my own land, which is, no, where are you really from, to color blindness. Oh, we are all same. We all belong to the human race. And my personal pet peeve, pathologizing cultural values and communication styles. So I recognize my communication style tends to be a bit different from the dominant group around me. And I myself have poked fun of me, saying, oh, it must be all the spices I'm eating, because I do tend to get emotional especially about issues that I really, really care for. And talking about secondary microaggressions, I remember I was talking to one of the leaders at the school I was working at, and I mentioned something that had happened to me a while ago, and which I thought was a microaggression. And that person kept, in the course of that conversation and the next meeting we had, they said multiple times, no one's out there to get you. No one's out there to get you, or something to that effect, meaning that I am reading too much into the incident that I mentioned, and I am taking it personally when I shouldn't. And by that time, I was quite aware, and I knew what was happening, and I knew what they were doing, but often, in the past, I have been left confused. Now, speaking about microaggression, I do want to mention a study that was done by Melissa Allenor, and it was published in Harvard Business Review, where 300 Black participants were given a task in a team of 2, and some of them were exposed to microaggressions by a partner who they thought was real, but actually was a computer simulated bot. Now, these people who were faced with a microaggression, they obviously reported significant negative emotions when they were working with their partner, but which was something we would expect. So for example, when the bot said, oh, they'll probably pick you as a leader because you're Black, LOL. So what was surprising was, they kind of, even though they felt negative emotions, they did not show it. They did not express them. And in fact, they were likely to say something completely conflict avoidant, like, LOL, we will see, to they'll probably pick you as the leader because you're Black, LOL. And the other surprising finding was that at the end of the study, when the researchers talked to these people one-on-one, only 29% reported the microaggression. And this was a situation where there was no potential backlash or loss to employment, and the number was 29%. So we can imagine that in the real world, microaggressions are rarely reported or acted on, even though they cause so much negative impact on the well-being of employees. And the other thing that microaggressions can lead to is projective identification. So if you haven't heard of the term, it is something like person A is feeling not so good about themselves, and they project their feeling, emotion, or idea to another person. And the other person might dismiss it completely, but sometimes because of their personal experiences or historical experiences, historically, the way their race or gender or community has been treated, they might latch onto it, and they might kind of start to identify with that projection. So I'll give you an example that happened to me. There was a leader at my school, and there was this. There were different options that every teacher had to choose from, and so I was talking to her, and I mentioned what I wanted, and she told me I should say, please. And I was kind of shocked and taken aback, because at that time I was working personally on being more assertive, because I found myself constantly apologizing, being meek, being very submissive. And that was something I was working on. And as soon as she said that, I kind of thought, oh, I'm going in the opposite direction and I'm not so polite anymore. And I felt so much shame. I did not address it with her. I did not say anything, and I kind of backtracked in what I was doing. And it's something I still struggle with. And so I project, this was an example of projective identification, where she said something, and even though I was not doing it, I kind of now identified myself as not being a polite person. Racial stereotypes, we all know that. For example, Asian Americans are seen as great match for technical skills, but lacking in leadership potential. In a discussion where an Asian American professional, male or female, a man or woman, might be seen as too emotional, a white male behaving the same way might be seen as having a career enhancing passion for the field. So yesterday I was at the Daniel Pearl Day of Music, and I was there with a friend of mine who is from Detroit. She's an African American woman, and she said that her line manager came to her classroom just that week, wanting to check the timetable, because she believed that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, even though she could have checked it on the computer first or checked with her learning assistant at the back of the class. But she came and disrupted the class because she kind of doubted my friend, and really just wanted to take it up with her. And from her experience already, she kind of knew that this was kind of a stereotype that was being kind of acted upon here. So there are lots of examples of that needs to be changed on this table that we're talking about. Tightrope, all of us, all women here are familiar with this. Women receive more negative comments about their personality than men on performance reviews. But then this is also something that people of color face, where if we behave assertively, we are often written off as angry, especially if they are Black. And I'm quoting research from Joan C. Williams, who I just mentioned, and they might be perceived as hot-headed if they are Latin, and sometimes untrustworthy if they are Asian American. Another bias or issue we face is tug of war. If more men show up, or tables are enlarged, but marginalized people are often encouraged to compete for a single seat on the table, and this triggers the scarcity mindset. And we need to elongate this table, of course, rather than have a certain demographic fight for limited seats on the table. And also we need to champion each other. And this is the reason I love WomenEd, because here we are championing each other and supporting each other. Prove yourself again. This is again something that women know that they have to repeatedly prove themselves and prove themselves more. This is again research proven that groups can be marginalized based on gender, color, and disabilities, and they have to really go above and beyond their responsibilities to show that they're capable, especially if it comes to becoming a leader. And another one of my pet peeves, people of color as showpieces. So a while ago, I was encouraged by a leader at my school then to apply for a position of responsibility. And one of the reasons I was given was that the school didn't have enough women of color. And so I would be a great addition to the team. And my reaction was, in my head, it completely threw me off. I mean, the person's intention might have been good. They mentioned a lot of other things, but I don't want to be seen just as a woman of color. I'm a multitude and myriad of things, and I don't want to show up on the website as, you know, a new flavor. So I think that's another thing that we need to work on. Now, coming to what I mentioned, something that is not related to the table, but it's related to the people who are taking the seat at the table. I have had to go through this whole process, and I'm still learning. And please do share if you have experiences similar or different than mine, or if you process when you're on the receiving end of biases or microaggressions, if you process them in a similar way or a different way to mine, I would really, like I said, I'm learning and I am honing this process. So why this is important is because studies indicate that discrimination actually affects not just the mental health, but the physical health of people. Krieger and Sydney reported, and I'm reading off some research that I found, Krieger and Sydney, they reported support for early survey findings that indicate denial of discriminatory treatment at the workplace is related to high blood pressure in employees. There was another study that reported experiences with racism led to people less reactive in mirror tracer tasks. So mirror tracer tasks are tasks that are visual and motor and that help us learn new things. So when we are under stress because of being discriminated against, it is harder for us to learn new things and of course to perform at our jobs. So what is my process? Using feelings as data. Our bodies can detect microaggressions and biases way before our brains can. A funny feeling at the pit of my stomach, the sinking of my heart, irregular breathing patterns. These are some of the bodily symptoms that show up for me in the face of microaggressions. And it's really important that we listen to these emotions in our body and name our feelings, first of all. What are we feeling? Are we feeling excluded? Are we feeling lonely? Are we feeling like we don't belong? And then after naming our feelings, the first thing we do when we name our feelings is we stop judging ourselves. We honor them. And the next thing is, what does this feeling tell us? And this data is not just about us, because this painful feeling has risen from an interaction with another person. So it tells us about the situation, about us, and also about the other person. How much can we trust them? How should we relate to them? How should we communicate to them? And I was just looking at the chat and I'm seeing, yes, it is hard to describe because it comes across as small. And I think it's in relation to microaggressions and the emotions we feel. Thank you, Jess. So I'm just quickly responding to the comments there. So I'll be really happy to read them as they come. So using your feelings as data. Again, what we are doing is by naming these feelings, by stepping back and listening to our feelings, we then can let the logical part of our brain take over. And what I have done in the past sometimes is either I've suppressed them or I have reacted to them immediately. And neither of them are a good idea. So honoring our feelings helps us create a better reaction to the incident. Code switching. So becoming aware of code switching. Code switching is a term that was coined in the 50s to describe how bilingual individuals switch between languages and corresponding identities. And now it has evolved, this word, to describe how marginalized people adjust and adapt their behavior, their appearance, their language to fit the dominant culture. And this is why a lot of children will bring pizza rather than, you know, food from their own culture, because they want to belong. And as teachers, we need to set an example and be aware of this code switching ourselves. And I'm not, you know, we do have to integrate. We go to a new country, we work at a new workplace. We have to integrate and assimilate, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there needs to be an intention where what we are doing to assimilate and integrate ourselves into the dominant culture, is it intentional? Is it something that is needed, or are we denying a part of ourselves just to fit in? So it's really important for us to continue to be ourselves, even in a new situation. Another thing is, we need to be aware of counter narratives. So as we have these conversations with the people on the table about what are the things that need to be changed, there will be people who have their own story going in their head. And these are especially people who do not want to talk about unequal opportunity or the existence of gender inequalities or racism. And it's really important to know them. So we are aware of them, we can deal with them, we can respond to them. So some of these counter narrative themes are the idea that racism is over and it's dying out. No, it's just becoming more subtle, but it's there. People of color are obsessed with race, so victim shaming. Alleging discrimination in itself is racist and divisive. So for example, if you're saying Black Lives Matter, you are kind of implying that other lives don't matter, but that's not true. Claiming discrimination is playing the race card. And I know I have been very wary of asking for more, because I feel like I am playing the race card. And I always, in fact, ask for less because I don't want to come across as that person. Civil rights are a crutch for those who lack merit or drive. You know, I think we can talk about merit when we neutralize the historical effect of the opposite side of, you know, when this did not happen. And lastly, racism will always be with us. So it's a waste of time to talk about it. No, it's not. And then finally, be solution oriented and future focused. I know, like, sometimes we tend to dwell in pity and we complain, and that's okay to start with, but then ultimately we need to come up with solutions. And the onus of finding these solutions is not just on the marginalized groups. It is a shared responsibility, but definitely we need to be proactive with that. And lastly, sorry, that was not the last one. This is the last one. This was a game changer for me. Look for belonging. So as I've talked to more and more people, so I grew up, you know, and I came to the, you know, when I worked in other countries, other schools, I constantly felt like I didn't belong. I didn't belong to, you know, when I was with other people in the Indian community, I feel like I didn't belong because my ideas were more internationalized or whatever. And, you know, so everywhere I saw this, and as I talked to more people, I felt like all of us feel like we're on the sidelines at some point or the other. We are all marginalized in some situation or the other. Even the dominant group in a different situation, you know, we are all in, we shape shift, we are in different places. And so it's not a unique experience that I am having. And then I read this quote by Brené Brown in her book, Braving the Wilderness, and it has completely changed me. And I now look for my tribe. I now look for the people and the communities where I belong, rather than focus on communities where I don't belong. So I'll leave some silence and let you read this.
Thank you, Jen.
That's the end.
Thank you for your time. It was, and of course you belong here within our WomenEd community. We appreciate your time this morning. Or where are you in the world? Where are you based?
I'm in Taiwan.
Taiwan. What
Taiwan
time
is a
it for
tiny
you?
island off the coast of of China. The time over here right now is 7:23. I was a bit
Okay.
I went a bit over time, but yeah.
That's okay. But have a lovely
No
evening.
worries.
It's
Yeah,
great to
thank
have you
you.
join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaya. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Liz.
Kathleen, how are you? Oh, you're on silent, my lovely.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen.
No worries. So Kathleen is on her own this afternoon because obviously COVID's decided to spread its wings.
So, shall I start?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. We're super excited.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about what and where is the table. First of all, when I on Twitter, when this went out about we're looking for speakers to speak about this, I thought, this is an interesting one. And I think what I'm going to share is, well, exactly that. I'm going to try and answer the question, what and where is the table? Because as much as I kind of think about the table, it is a metaphor that I think sometimes we can make bigger in our heads, and then it can cause problems and then create boundaries. So like I said, so I'm Kathleen. Laverne is my partner in crime. So we actually went to school together, and she has been there, and we've been there for each other throughout the whole journey of our adult lives. We've grown up together, and it would have been great for her to be here today, but unfortunately she does have COVID, so she's not joining us today. But she also works in education and is a real firm kind of fighter for children with needs and children on the outskirts of the mainstream school. So the first thing that I'm going to be, so she is here in spirit. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is just dismantling the table, because it is something that, although Shirley has said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your own folding chair. Yes, we can, but I do believe, like I said, I do believe that it's something that we've kind of created in our minds. Yes, we are all aware of the hierarchy, the structures that are in place in society, whether it be in a workplace, in school. But once we kind of think about that, I find that it can be quite limiting. So yes, we are considering like diversity. Diversity is great, having us represented, like that important quote, from I think her name is Verna Myers. So diversity is being asked to come to the party. But really, once we are at the table, if we're going to go with that metaphor, once we are at the table, what's really important is the inclusion aspect of it. So if you've invited me to your party, I'm there, great. But are you willing to see me dance? Are you willing to see me express myself? Are you willing to accept me express myself? You might look at me, but not actually embrace it. So I think it's the conclusion thing that we really do need to look at and kind of separate that out and value that importance, because there are many of us now that are breaking through, regardless of how we represent diversity. We are getting the seats at the table, but we can be there, but we don't want it to be tokenistic. We want to be there and be valued and be celebrated and represented. And really, when we're thinking about culture, I think the culture is for everyone to kind of celebrate and value everybody that's there. And really, culture only changes when the people that are working together understand each other. So in order to do that, we kind of got to think about the trust. Is the trust in the organization, in the school, is that actually there, where everyone feels like they can contribute and actually say what they feel? And sometimes that comes along with unlearning. So when we may have these stereotypes or these unconscious biases, and sometimes they do need to kind of be challenged, and the challenge is there, and that's fine. I think it's a healthy thing to be able to challenge people and to express your feelings. And I think that's kind of what's needed. So what I'm going to throw out very quickly is for us, before we answer that reflection question, what I'd like everyone to do is to just consider, because like I'm here, so I'm at the table, and the table being a metaphor at the moment as our Unconference. So I'm here as a Black woman, from a Black British woman, actually, let's think about that. So I'm a Black British woman, I'm here, and I'm from Caribbean descent, working class family, but my working class family was of high intellect, and I would say that quite proudly. Although they came over, my mum and dad, from Jamaica as immigrants, they worked very hard, and they worked their way up, and they had high intellect, and that was what was installed in us. So very quickly, just to keep this engaging, could I ask you to just drop in the chat, just to kind of have three aspects of yourself. What makes you who you are? What makes you you? So thinking about intersectionality there. So we are all women, but what other characteristics do you use to identify yourself? So I'm just going to have a quick look at that in the chat. And another question that I've got there for you, just to reflect on, is how active are you in ensuring that all voices at the table are understood? Now, this may be voices in your classroom with your class teachers. This may be voices in your school and your team, if you're year group leaders or assistant heads, in your headship team. How active are you? And it has to be an active thing. We have to actively do this in order to make changes. So how active are you in ensuring that all voices at the table are understood? And I chose that word understood purposely as well. It's not, are they heard? Because you can be at the table, like as I go back to diversity, you can be at the table and be speaking and be represented, but are you being inclusive of those people? You may hear them, but do you understand them? And that's the key thing there that I'm getting at. So just having a look through the chat then. So we've got female leader, global educator, I love that, and Welsh too. Woman childless by choice, and I love that, by choice. British with Polish heritage. So all these multi-layers. So we've got Angelina, who's just spoken, Chinese, Australian, living in Berlin, Germany, woman, mother, parent of an intellectually disabled child, first generation university graduate from migrants. Right, so we've got all of these different empathetic, passionate and driven, Greek Cypriot from London, the lovely Christella. So we've got all of these identities, and if they're at the table, we all have to feel included. We all have to know that our voices are being heard and understood, not just heard. We have to go the extra step there. We have to have that extra active listening, and so we are understood. And the reason that is important, because we do know that there is a hierarchy structure at these tables, these organisations, and it usually comes down to knowledge, experience, pay, gender. We know what these barriers are, but it's up to us really as individuals to show up and to try and challenge and break those down. So again, like I alluded to before, that comes down to trust. In order for a group to operate really well, it comes down to trust and being able to feel that you're heard. Without trust, unfortunately, then teams don't work well together. And we know, I'm sure there are many of us here today, when we've realised that the trust has gone in the place that we are, we leave, whether that be a relationship, whether that be a school, any kind of structure that has been around us. Once the trust is gone, we don't open up anymore. We don't want to share, and then we leave and we go. We kind of almost check out, and it goes down by percentage if you're like me, I don't know. Okay, so the trust is really important there. So where there is a lack of trust, then the team will not feel comfortable to share. So again, we have to build the trust, and it comes from every individual in the organisation, school, or what be it. Next thing I want to talk about is Ubuntu leadership. So with that really, is the focus there is about let me get the quote, just give me one moment. I am because we are. Again, it goes back to valuing the voices of one another. So working together collaboratively. So when you work together collaboratively, there is a connectedness, an understanding of one another. And really, when we think about us working in schools, we are all ultimately there for the children. We are there for the students, the pupils, and the kind of outer ring of the parents in the community. And we're all there for the same goal, but we can't all get there if we're not on the same journey in terms of being connected. And I think what sometimes can go amiss or is not valued is that important part of everyone being able to share an element of who they are. we're not just leaders, we're not just women, we're not just mothers. The fact that we have a woman here that is childless by choice, British with a Polish heritage, has value. It adds a different perspective, a different voice, a different angle that can come out and really expose some things that we may not be aware of. Our empathetic, passionate and driven Christella, maybe actually to bring an angle in there that we may not be able to see. So really what we need to do is, when we're thinking about our teams, we need to value everybody's perspective, because it's through that then we have additional eyes, and that's of value, and I think that's great in itself anyway. So an action point that I have for you now is for you to think about a project or a work stream and consider what is possible here. So how can you collaborate? How can you bring yourself to that table in your most authentic self? So when I say your authentic self, your whole self, who you are really. You're not just your title. You are more than that. The person that you are at home, obviously you're not going to bring all your things into work, but I think we really do need to show up as our authentic selves a bit more, and really mean, but the true meaning of authentic also. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk very quickly about challenges faced, because I, with everybody obviously, have faced many challenges. So I started off by saying I'm a Black British woman, Caribbean descent. My parents came over in the 60s, and I am the youngest, and I think that's relevant as well. I'm the youngest of 6 children. And because of that, I was able to see models of how my sisters and my brother was kind of handled school. Let's put it that way, how they handled school and how they were viewed. Now, I can see that they were kind of, I would say, treated differently. I was aware of that from a young age. Their reports, the way that they were viewed, the language that was used, I was very astute as a young child. So I was able to see the differences, and I noticed it even at church, how we were viewed. So what I'm trying to say here is that I've been aware of the challenges of being who I am, Black, British, and as a young child. Now, as I was growing up, I've always had that kind of layer where I've always felt as the young person that hasn't always been able to speak up. And that has come out through my introvertism, if that is even a word. So I am an introvert. And I would say that that is the biggest challenge that I've faced within my career as being who I am. Being an introvert doesn't mean that I'm shy. I'm not shy. I'm here doing this now. What it is that sometimes I feel that I shouldn't be able to speak up. I can't speak up. I feel uncomfortable speaking up. I have all the ideas in my head, and I find it sometimes difficult to want to share with that. And when Laverne and I were talking about the challenges faced here, what came up for both of us was the ego. Now, as an introvert, you may think, oh, how does ego even come into play here? But what it was that I was using my ego and my hiding behind the kind of label of being an introvert as a way not to kind of bring my authentic self to the table. Another layer that stopped me from doing that was also being Black British, because I thought, okay, we're not always heard at the table, so it's okay, it's all right, I can hide behind being quiet, I can hide behind being an introvert, it's okay. So when I put here being at the table is not enough, it really isn't. I had to overcome that. Yes, I've worked my way through my career. Now I'm at various different tables now. I have to be active. I have to actively challenge things. I have to actively speak up, because it's only through our different stories and our different experiences, like I've alluded to before, that other people will be able to understand or hear us first of all, and then understand the different perspectives and how important that is. So a reflection question here is, in failure, and I should have shared a story, but I don't think I've got time now. In failure, who do you bring into the room? Because sometimes through failure, for example, not getting a position, you may immediately say, well, they've missed out, da, 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 da. But is it that they've missed out? Yes, that's an element of it. But could the ego be clouding some aspects as to why you may not be at that table? It's controversial, but sometimes we do need to go inside and kind of think about why we didn't get the role. It may be, yes, it may be that they may be different reasons as to why they may have not accepted you, down to other agendas, but we can't change that. All we can do is show up as ourselves and keep working on ourselves, which is why the ego is so important. So going back to that question then, in failure, who do you bring into the room? Once you've had a failure, do you hold on to that? What is your ego saying to you? When you go back into the room, you face those people that may have given you a challenging thing to think about, negative feedback. Is it your ego that is speaking and responding, or is it you? And there we have to think about the difference between reaction and reflection, okay? And I'm not sure what the time is, but I'm going to go on to my next slide very quickly.
Okay, you've got a couple of minutes, go for it.
Yes. So here we are with recreating the table. So instead of begging for a seat, it's really important that we build our own table now. So there are three options. We either rewrite the metaphor, remove the table completely so we're not bound. We have to go where we want to go and speak from wherever you are. You can create your own platform. I have done that myself. I have a podcast where I interview people and speak, and that's where I'm able to be my authentic self. So the takeaway thought that I'm going to leave you with is, what table are you creating? And I just want to share one quick poem before I go. Sometimes you can play a role in your own suffering by standing, by waiting for other people to change. Instead of being accountable and deciding what you will no longer tolerate, remember that you have to be an active participant in creating the change you want to seek in your life. So to try is to lie, and to do is to be true. And that's it for me.
Wow, thank you, Kathleen. That was a perfect ending to our epic two and a half days. I don't know how many days it's been now that we've been at the Unconference. I found it really powerful, the honesty that you brought to the session, and that real challenge. I think the point of being heard but also being understood. Two really small concepts, but really important for us to all consider. And in conclusion to these, how many days it is, Natasha, I'm not sure. I think the conclusion that we get rid of the table. I think we're done with the table. The table needs to go.
Absolutely, so fed up of tables. And actually, I don't even like working at a table, let me be honest.
So thank you, Jaya. Awesome, absolutely awesome. Thank you. And now, Natasha.
Yes. Sorry, I do have this little man keep popping in because it's the end of school here, so I've had to pick him up. And
hey, how you doing?
Hi, are you going to say hi to everyone?
It's been a long day, I know, yeah. I know. You're still going strong.
We are. So we have, we've got crime.
Yes, come on, our global leads are going to appear any moment now. I can see Palm, you're lurking.
And Vivian, hi Vivian.
Where are you, Vivian?
I can see her.
Hold on, I'm going on to gallery view. There you are. Hi, Vivian.
Yes. I'm here. We have been working in the background. How you doing? How is everyone? What an amazing morning.
Oh my gosh, it's been so good the last couple of days. Like, we've had some amazing speakers. I've been really inspired by everybody, and I've been able to dip in and dip out, and yeah, it's been super. I'm so enthused.
Got to have that pledge.
Continue with the year.
We've got to definitely pledge something at the end, I think. What are we all going to take away? I think somebody, Aretha said that yesterday. Aretha Banton said, what is it? What action are we going to take? That's the question.
Well, we've got a little bit more time to think about that, haven't we, while we go into our traditional gendered cheese.
Do it, Vivian.
Session.
Do it.
As several colleagues have said, people have gone down like 9 pins at times. So all of us are having a go at the gendered cheese session today. We've based it on some of the themes that have been coming out in the whole Unconference in that way. So I'll share my screen.
Now, Vivian, do we stay on or go off? Because I've got a feeling that we're going to have that kind of really shocked face as it starts to, as you start to go
I think
through.
stay on. Absolutely, stay on.
I need to get the picture of everyone being like, what?
And we need shock and awe noises all the way through, whenever's relevant.
How can cheese pods be gendered?
Okay, so we know that we've got a lot of new voices on, lot of new voices and new people for this Unconference, which has been fabulous. So I thought it was important really to explain to people where gendered cheese came from, first of all. And this is an image that Jules Dolby, who is the super god of gendered cheese, first came across. And as you can see here, we've got two sets of cheese pods, apparently, and one's in blue, and the other one, which in big letters say is for girls with a Z, is yellow. So Jules started posing the question, how can we have cheese that is gendered? And not only gendered, of course, but we have to be able to have that spelled out for us in really big letters. So that's where gendered cheese came from. And ever since then, at the end of our Strategic Leaders Unconferences, we bring you up to date on gendered cheese. So what horrors have we got for you this year? So we're going with the pink and blue still. Personalised glitter hairbrushes in pink and personalised articulated trucks in blue. So the whole pink and blue thing just keeps going. Would you share any of these with your children?
God, no. I wonder, like, what about a girl that wants to be a truck driver? She can look at that and think, that's it, sorry, it's over for you. No, never.
My daughter would just be like, ew. That would be her response. If I gave her anything pink, she loves a little bit of pink, but no, just, Vivian, what are you doing to us?
And what about Austin, Liz? I mean, would he like a glitter pink hairbrush?
He would, actually.
Great, that's great.
Yeah, Austin dances to his own tune, which I love. But yeah, straight away. And we know, I mean, even I look at my kids' bedrooms and we try so hard to be gender neutral, but I can go into my son's room, and even for the glitter, he loves my shoes particularly. What I find is that it still has a blue bias. You know, this whole pink blue thing is still ongoing, and we talk about it every single year. Every single year. And you go into the local toy shop, and I know a lot of toy shops have really tried to work on this, but you can spot it a mile off, the pink section and the blue section. And this subliminal messages start, you know, at 12 months or even before babies are born. I mean, just think of the shopping that you do. Anyway, they drive me bonkers, Vivian.
Well, my niece had a baby girl recently, and I had to work very hard to find a card that would not be gendered, but that, you know, her mum would still like, and wasn't thinking I was forcing my gender stereotypes on her. So yeah, we've still got a lot of work. And the gendered cheese image was from 2014. This image is 2022. So we're really not moving forward very much, are we? And of course, the pink and blueness starts to spread. Oh, look at their faces. Starts to spread into school. And we've been particularly struck by some of the presentations, not least WomenEd Tech this morning, but also about the subject ones yesterday about physics, for example. Look at that tweet about leading mathematic educators in Australia. Oh, well, it's great there's a diverse man in there, isn't it? But come on, where are the women in maths? And look at the quotation on the side, which was really not happy with this at all. And
it's too depressing for words, isn't it?
So no wonder girls don't go into tech jobs or engineering roles when these are the subliminal messages. And we just thought it would be really good to share our female conference speaker bingo card because it hasn't come out for a while. But we'll put it on Twitter so you can use it whenever you want, because of course that comment from the organisers is perfect gendered cheese, isn't it? If you want to object, then don't attend the conference. Oh my God, this is taking us back to the start of WomenEd, where we were infuriated by all these things. And it's not just the one subject, is it? This was definitely this year, early this year, and this was the words of the social mobility czar.
Sorry, Vivian, you're pushing me over the edge. This is just too much. Oh my goodness. I know. I saw this.
Did you? You saw it.
I saw it, and I actually
Yeah, I heard it, and I was.
I heard
shock.
it. Yeah,
I literally, I was like, oh, I saw red.
Well, maybe physics isn't something girls tend to fancy because of all the pink and blueness and the images and stereotypes they're bombarded with. But for the United Kingdom Social Mobility Commission chair to say that and say that's fine, that's no problem, there's a lot of hard maths in there that they don't want to do. I mean, that's the system just perpetuating it.
But Vivian, that's because all the greatest math educators are men, remember? That's what last week told us. So it's obviously.
But the other thing here is this is a female leader who, yes, we know, those of you that know, I'm not going to even use the name, but those of you that know who we're talking about, you can see it here. And as an example of female leadership, it does such a disservice to us all who are trying really hard to be inclusive, to use the positions that we're in to influence change, to be able to elevate others. And this is an absolute disgrace to the profession. I haven't got anything else to say about it.
And hopefully you're getting some screenshots of the images here so we can plaster Twitter and all social media with exactly why these things are wrong. So subjects, with girls and boys are channeled into subjects when they're at school because of the pink and blue and the stereotypes developing. So what happens then when they want to go into jobs? Well, I just thought this was a classic here. This is from the dress code instructions for a conference in Thailand. And there's definitely green and red in terms of what you are allowed to do. So I'll read a couple of them out because it might be a bit too small for you. So for women, the very first word there is the dress code is conservative. Full matching business skirt suits, including a jacket and a dress skirt. Black skirt recommended. Neutral colours if they are matching top and bottom. Skirt should be a little below the knee and never shorter than above the knee. Now, I know there will be cultural expectations in different countries, but I'm not quite sure what the cultural element is in saying that everything has to match, and that you basically, if you look at the images, you have to look like a man.
It's just appalling, isn't it? I mean, I would not be going to this conference, I can tell you that now, just purely because I constantly wear trousers, so clearly I'm not welcome.
You're allowed to wear trousers as long as it looks as if you're a man wearing them in a suit.
All right. Okay.
That's perfectly allowed. Perfectly.
Like the hair and jewelry recommendations.
Why is that lady on the end not allowed? What's wrong with her suit? Sorry,
she's got a cross on her.
She's got jewelry on. Got to be simple. You can only have studs for earrings. Long hair should be pulled back away from the face.
No, she's wearing trousers. That's what it is. You can only wear a skirt suit.
Oh yes.
Only a skirt suit.
See, even I missed that. Yeah, not allowed to wear trousers.
That's why I was like, I'm so confused as to what the issue is. Seriously.
Is it cultural? Is it religious? Is it just sexism?
Well, and how interesting, Vivian, when I came into my school, we're a non-uniform school, which I absolutely love. I've gone full circle on this issue. But when I arrived and I looked at the list of rules, it's not just extreme like this, but do you notice how many more rules the women have than men?
Mm.
And when it comes to school uniforms or non-uniform schools, when you're giving protocols about what is acceptable and what isn't, I found that all of the guidance was actually almost all was aimed at women and controlling women. So what we've done is we've taken every instruction out. Where, you know, the question of how wide could a strap be? You know, how short a short's going to be in the summer, and we're getting away from these discussions. And the rule I've now come up with, and it's a really rubbish rule, but my rule is it grandparent proof? Is what you're wearing? But then I think about my grandparents, and that's a terrible idea. But it's a real challenge for school leaders. I mean, this is extreme, but how do we get inclusive approaches to clothing in our schools? Truly inclusive. I think that's a whole issue in its own right.
Oh, every one of these slides, I think, is a whole issue in its own right. We could do a conference on just each slide if we wanted to. But this policing of women's bodies and what they wear, of course, is a huge theme this year. Not only what they wear, but whether you can even see the hair in terms of what is happening in Iran for those brave women at the moment. So the policing of women's bodies is increasing, certainly since we started gendered cheese in 2014. And this, of course, is a professional set of uniforms in that way. So this is how people are expected to be at work or at a conference. And it leads to this, which came out earlier this year. Several people explained the fact that this was all right to have 6 new appointments, all men, all white men celebrated, because it was in private schools in England. What? We've got to stamp that bingo conference card straight on this, haven't we? Because we know in England, because of the class issues, that so many of the future leaders of the country are educated in these schools. So even more so that the images of the head teachers should be diverse and should at least include some women, if that's as far as you can go. This is shocking, I think. And that they actually want to put it in their magazine. So the issues at work are a problem. And we started.
This today, I was like, honestly, I'm going to get kicked off of the internet because I'm just going to start using language that I'm not allowed to use.
We started the Unconference with this, so we thought we had to finish it and make sure everybody saw it. Right, how are you getting a CEO body yourself, Liz, then?
Well, I've got my WomenEd top on. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I thought it was a joke actually when I first saw it. And then I Googled it and I actually attributed it to the Mail earlier, and it's not, it's the Times, which is even worse in the UK. And it's wrong on so many different levels. And, you know, I'm a CEO. I'm really proud of the fact that I'm a CEO. And this isn't for me. And what can I say? It's just sad. It's sad. And I hope that more amazing women CEOs that I do know, not enough of them, but they're around the world, that we use our voices in any way that we can, whenever we can, to challenge this idea of what it needs to be a CEO. And not just within the schools that we're in, but particularly amongst boards, and the idea of what effective school leadership needs to be at board levels. Because of course, these are the people that are making the appointments. So working with recruitment agencies that also influence boards quite significantly. I think there's a lot of work going on out there. But this is, I would have thought this would have been 20 years ago. Shocking.
Which certainly makes me feel as if the whole issue of gender and stereotypes and sexism and misogyny is going backwards at the moment. Because in 2014, we had a lot of laughs at gendered cheese and other pink and blue things. But this is a whole new level, it would seem to me.
I genuinely think this was unconscious bias. This was just something that someone put together really quickly without thinking about what they were saying and about the
But
message.
even if they did, how much do these editors get paid? Someone should have gone through this and went, do you know what? I don't think this needs to be put in it. Like,
but the question is, Natasha, how many of them are men?
Just a year 6 kid could have gone in and gone, do you know what? I'm a little bit offended by that.
But how many of them are men? How many of these editors are men? So they wouldn't have noticed because they would have reinforced each other's unconscious biases.
I'm just to even think that anyone, I can't. It's very rare I have nothing to say, but I have nothing to say that should be out there in the public. So I'm just going to keep my.
Well, I hope that's let people get an image of it if they wanted to. And what's going on in the chat then? Because I kept watching the numbers on the chat go up in terms of the comments.
Well, Christella said it's not, her CEO body doesn't look like that.
Oh, come on, Christella, you're letting the side down if your body doesn't look like that. Come on.
Oh, we've got lots of comments about the dress code. At the school I left in Colombia, who's this? Sorry, Rachel said, at the school I left in Colombia, the girls had only been granted the right to wear trousers in 2019. Then after they'd been allowed, very few wanted to actually wear them. As if they did, they were being bullied by both boys and other girls. So a long way to go, really.
Very
This talk is disturbing my equilibrium.
Oh,
sorry, Kay. We're going to end well in a moment, don't worry.
And you know, obviously, I'm in the Middle East, so culturally there are things that we have to do, but they would never, I have never felt in a position where someone would say to me, no, you can't wear that, but you can wear that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And people have so many comments to make about places like the Middle East, but I would never be expected. No one would ever say something like that to me, ever.
And we have so many bigger problems to sort out in the world, haven't we? To be policing women's jobs, women's subjects, to be pushing girls into certain subjects. It's just, so even I didn't say what I was going to say.
We were speaking to Effa yesterday and she was just talking about the colour of her hair. I'm like, what impact does the colour of her hair have on anything that she does in relation to her job? Like, please, somebody explain this to me, because if it doesn't, why is there even a comment about it? And why is it?
And Rachel there in the chat has said she's about to download on her husband with a whole load of F the patriarchy comments. Yay, Rachel.
And it's so bad because he's miserably not done anything wrong. I bet he's in work trying to promote and do all of the right things, and then he just gets this whole barrage of this is not okay. We're in 2022, for goodness sake. We shouldn't still be having these conversations.
Vi saying last week a student was told by a male teacher that her top was uncomfortable for others.
We've had that as well in our school community. Yeah, is that you're distracting others?
Yes.
Am I?
Yeah.
Listen, I'll be like, you better come in naked next time. That'll be a distraction. How dare they? Stop looking.
Again, it's stop blaming the girls, stop blaming the women for not going to a conference. Come on. You can't be what you can't see. We know that basic premise, and the whole point of the Unconference has been to tackle those issues and to help all of us find different ways through. Stop blaming the women. So I thought that would fire us all up at the end of it. So thank you very much. And we'll tweet out some of those images so you can spread the love further.
Brilliant, Vivian. Thank you.
Back to you, Liz and Natasha.
So what are we doing now? I was, now that you've arrived, Vivian, I was devolving all responsibility to you. We are going to close. That's what we're going to do.
Yes. Wait a second, we're making one announcement.
Oh, do the announcement.
Hang on, before. Right, I'm just Right, ready.
Go.
So we have an announcement of, do you know what it is? I'm going into our WhatsApp group, and what's the first thing I see? That male CEO body. And then a whole load of WhatsApp messages where we were absolutely kicking off about it. And now I can't get to the actual information I need.
Is it the merch?
Yes. Merch.
Yes.
Merch. We're giving away free stuff. It's like one of the most important things. Where's my message?
And I know who it is if you want me to say.
Go on, Vivian, do it.
Ready.
Our very final offer of merch, our final winner goes to Khadija Dukhani.
Who is watching? Who is in the audience?
Is Khadija there?
Oh,
she is there. I've just
free stuff.
Khadija, you can choose one item up to £50 from our merch, and I'll message you and we'll sort it out. Woo! Oh, it's great. Somebody was finally actually here.
Yay! Excellent. So that was kind of like the last bit, the last kind of farewell. Thank you all. Honestly, it's been an amazing weekend and an evening. I think, as always, everyone's got lots out of it. Wait a second, darling. Everyone's got lots out of it. I need to stop talking because my son's literally had enough of me. Now. As always, obviously inspiring. We've left now not only on a buzz, but on a call to action, because we've fired ourselves up with our gendered cheese as well. Liz.
I was just taking my headphones off so the children could hear as well. So they've now got this. There must be some weird child thing that knew that it was coming to an end, because mine have just appeared from the ground floor.
No, we heard you saying that it's the end.
Timing.
Right. We have lunch now.
But the most important.
Yeah.
I am loud. Yeah,
it's all coming to an end.
So
I think we've got to end it now.
I want to say thank you to everybody. It's been 2.5 days of contributions from extraordinary leaders in education from so many different backgrounds, and I've really enjoyed hearing from speakers that we know very well, as well as new speakers. And I think the last word really, when we think about what changes we can make, because we can get very disheartened, maybe a little bit angry about things, but we can see progress in other areas. So last words, Palm.
Gosh, I think
you're on mute.
Going to. Oh, am I? Am I? No, I don't think I am. I am going to take away that call for action. I think that whole idea of really thinking carefully about what I'm going to do to change the environment I'm in. I'm really going to think about the presentation from Rachel yesterday, where she talked about that, if you're not invited to the table, then you feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to think about how I can make sure that people who aren't usually represented feel they are part of something, feel they belong. That's mine. Natasha, what about you?
I feel like sometimes, like you're up and down with work-wise, and I take a break from stuff, but at the moment I feel like I just need to be a little bit more consistent in terms of being vocal and making sure that I'm also bringing other people to the table and to the table, the broken table, whatever it is, just making sure I'm opening up those opportunities, especially when we go through massive recruitment rounds here, and making sure that I'm actively doing that, thinking about the wording on our application, you know what I mean, and all of that. So I think that I need to just start being a bit more proactive with that for this year, basically.
I think what I'm taking from the whole weekend is just what a brilliant community we have in WomenEd, and that between us all we can really make the changes we've been discussing and debating, and whatever the metaphor is, whatever the system is, we've just got to work within it to bring about that change. And together we can make a phenomenal difference. And it was lovely yesterday because we were being told that, well, that's exactly what WomenEd is already doing. And so we've just got to keep on fighting that good fight and doing it together collaboratively as a whole global community. It's been wonderful.
We are strong, for sure. As a community.
We are. I've got my mug from Vivian, which tells us that. So on that note, I think this draws us to the end of the Global Unconference 2022. We're still in 2022. And thank you, everybody. Stay in touch. We've got the chat. Obviously, you can go onto Twitter, so #WomenEd. Vivian really likes it if you put the hashtag in, because then we can follow it and we can respond as well. Please continue the conversations, make connections. If there were speakers that really resonated with you, hunt them down, find them, and continue that conversation. And that's the last word from me. Anybody else?
We'll put all the videos onto YouTube as soon as we can. It takes time because there's a lot of hours of processing to do. But for everybody who's got a ticket, we'll send you an email and let you know, give you all the links. And it would be great to share those as well, so that we get even more people joining us to fight the good fight.
And if there was anyone that you particularly loved, not only follow them on Twitter, but also amplify them, talk about them, share their thoughts. And next time you go to a WomenEd event, bring someone with you, or at least 2 people, or at least 3 people. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye.